Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 72 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. I have to be honest, I was trying to think of a clever, exciting way to introduce the show. I was thinking about, big, bold statements, whether or not I would just revert to, good morning, afternoon, or evening. But on this occasion, I figured let's just go with hello, everyone, or whatever I said. I've already forgotten. Must be my old age. And on that topic, hello, Phil.
So shady. I'm surprised you didn't go with a big bold statement like we're the best we're the best 40k podcast out in the world. And if you're another podcast that thinks you're bigger than us, come at us with your knives and your sticks, and we'll have a street fight. Yeah,
we'll have a street fight with anyone who dares to suggest that they are a bigger podcast than us, even though there is every likelihood that they are, in fact, a bigger podcast than us. Although we're doing all right these days. I mean, I don't want to kind of, kick things off by, blowing our own trumpets, as they say. But, it's going all right, isn't it? We're building some good momentum after the removal of certain individuals who shan't be named. One of these days we'll get over that.
Everyone missed him for like a week, and now everyone's like, great work without him.
It's funny, though, because I was talking to Richie about this the other day, and he was thinking of offering some kind of sweepstake scenario where, based on how many times we bring him up in conversations.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I don't know if I said it on the podcast. I did think we should do some kind of a bingo card based on certain things that we say, that we quite often say. So maybe a listen-along bingo card or potentially a drinking game.
Potentially. A drinking game would be a wonderful addition to this endeavour, as would also some kind of, acknowledgement of the amount of times we reference our former podcast pal, Sir Joseph Coles. But he isn't here today. But what is, Phil?
Today, we have those green, mysterious, robed individuals that everyone jokes that they are on the side of chaos. I don't know. Is that
the Oompa Loompas, Phil?
The Oompa Loompas, the green. No, they're orange.
They were orange, to be fair. They had green hair.
They do have small little individuals alongside them, and we can be talking than none other than, what was it? The Watchers in the Dark.
The Watchers in the Dark.
The Watchers in the Dark.
The First Legion, the Dark Angels, an army that everyone seems to say they have some sort of historical relationship with. But very few people actually really play, I find. Like, everyone's always gone, I used to do Dark Angels, or Dark Angels were my first army. I don't really see them that much.
Were they top meta back in 4th edition or something? And that's why I used to play them.
They had a really good 6th edition build that I was using quite a lot. And that's when but again, like so many of these other people, I would pretend that I had an early relationship with the Dark Angels. And I did own some Dark Angels when I was about like 14 or something, but truth be told, I actually played Space Wolves before I played Dark Angels, so it's difficult to claim any affinity to them beyond the fact that I have played them on and off for the last 20 odd years, but such is life. But before we do talk about the Dark Angels, which is the bulk of the show, we may as well begin with a 5-star review.
Well, howdy, partner. These boys keep joshing us about with all their chitter-chatter about little plastic figurines. They've asked me to do this jingle for them. I don't know what they're talking about half the time. But anyway, now it's time for that 5-star review. Thanks for listening and enjoy the rest of the show. And let's all pray that it doesn't go on as long as it did last week. Yeehaw!
This week's 5-star review comes from Boise 40k, from a platform that we were otherwise unaware of, Podcast Addict. Now, Phil told me about this, didn't you, Phil?
I did. He actually reached out to me on Instagram I left you a 5-star review on a platform that you probably haven't heard of. And he was right, we hadn't.
We hadn't heard of it. But despite having not heard of it, we are on it.
We get around.
We don't even know where we are half the time. I'm always curious about that, of how much of that is being reflected in our performance and in our numbers, as it were. Like, I've never heard of this place before, yet we are on it.
Brilliant.
It's very strange. But in addition to us being there, Boise 40k is there. And obviously, thank you so much for your 5-star review, although I say that before I've actually read it. I haven't even skimmed through it yet. So this will be a fresh experience. It reads, Boise 40K, 5 stars. One of my favorite 40K podcasts, exclamation mark. There is a great balance of topics and banter, and I think they have genuinely useful insights and thoughts on the hobby. Go check them out, exclamation mark. There you go. I mean, that is probably, credit where credit is due to Boise 40K, that is possibly one of the most succinct and, to the point reviews I've had in a while, or we've had in a while. I think it's actually really lovely. I'm not used to someone just being so abundantly obvious with the review. That's really nice. It was a nice change, wouldn't you say so, Phil?
I know, having a nice, short, succinct, to the point. It means we can't ramble. This will be a nice short segment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a way, it's sort of bizarre because one of the things that he's done that hasn't happened in a while, I think he spout pretty much everything correctly.
Are you being a grammar Nazi with our fans?
No, it's not. But it just flowed. I was like able to read it. I'm usually suspecting that at some point during the process, I'm going to get bamboozled by a word or by a, specific version of the English language that will befuddle me. But that didn't occur on this occasion.
Although I have a slight nitpick with Boise. As lovely as that was, he said we were only one of his favourite 40K podcasts. Like, surely we have to be the top, because as we've already made the bold statement earlier, we are the best 40K.
We are the best.
It's got to our heads. The power is real. Just like
that's it. The power we wield is insubstantial but mighty in our own estimations. Anyway, look, Boise, mate, thank you so much for this 5-star review. I think it goes without saying that it means a lot to us to have people like yourself taking the time to write us reviews. And obviously, we really appreciate it. But to elaborate on that further, here's Phil.
Well, thank you very much. I think you pretty much covered it all. It was a nice, succinct review. So this will be a nice, succinct, hopefully not too rambly. Thank you very much. Well done. I would say please do it again on another platform. Drive those ratings up artificially. Thank you.
There you go. Spread the love out over multiple platforms. Share the fun. And obviously, thanks for reaching out to Phil on Instagram. I'm sure he
I appreciate it.
He loved that. Did you chat about much with Boise beyond his supply of a 5-star review?
I don't think we did actually.
He didn't get into any exciting topics.
I chat with quite a lot of people, so it all merges into one. But there's been quite a lot of chit chat about the new Marines. Chatting to someone about like the assault intercessors not having jump packs and how good they would be if they did.
That's true. They would be sufficiently better had they had jump packs. But if you would like to talk to Phil or just engage across our social media platforms and or leave us a 5-star review somewhere, we recommend that you do so because like Boise 40K, at some point we'll call you out over the internet and say thanks to you, which is worth something, right? I mean, it's certainly not nothing. So there you go. Get involved. Give us some 5-star love. But, before you do that, why don't you check out this episode of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast known as Lookout Sir, Transitional Noise. Woo! Hello. In this part of the podcast, potentially the only part of the podcast, we're going to talk about Dark Angels. Yay! It's almost like that's what we said we were going to do. Are you excited about Dark Angels, Phil? Have you ever been a, closet Dark Angel?
I don't think I have, but, one thing to be excited about, it is potentially the last Space Marine Codex to come out. So, great, we're over that hurdle and we can now get on with the rest of the armies. Won't that be exciting?
Yeah. Won't that be exciting? I mean, do you honestly believe that this will be the last of the Space Marine? No, not a chance, right?
No.
They are totally going to go back and revisit all the other chapters that they've already done. 100%.
Plus Black Templars.
Plus Black Templars, yeah. So says Valric, the man on the inside.
He knows. Yeah.
He's a boy in the know. But yeah, no, Dark Angels, right? I mean, look, as they go, Dark Angels have always had this really weird place within, the Space Marine chapters, because the thing that makes Dark Angels unique and has always been different about the Dark Angels is the way that their first and second company work. So the first company being their Deathwing, and the second company being the Ravenwing. Primarily beyond Ravenwing and Deathwing, historically, very little else about the Dark Angels has been dramatically different over the years from more kind of standard vanilla style Marines. Again, noting that, yeah, they like their plasma, and obviously there's all of the stuff going around about them being super secretive and or the whole kind of
Fallen.
The Fallen and all this stuff. I mean, they're rich in lore, but up until a couple of editions ago, they never really necessarily had an army-wide archetype other than Deathwing, Ravenwing synergies. So historically, I would always say that Dark Angel players normally were just using Dark Angels for a combination of Deathwing and Ravenwing. And, the Green Marines, as they would be called, were more of a kind of token gesture in people's army lists as it, pertained to what it was that you wanted to do. But now that they've essentially further established how Grim Resolve works and elaborated on that skill. And again, I'm speaking about this as if that's a recent change. I mean, it's recent in so much as it's, only really happened over the last 7-8 years. But, obviously it's quite a standard thing now that Grim Resolve is what it is. But yeah, they've always just been known as the stubborn Space Marines. And bizarrely, up until recently, being the stubborn Space Marines hasn't really been seen as a massive advantage. And I do feel like Games Workshop are still wrestling with what it is that they give to the standard Dark Angels to make them super interesting, or how to best realize the design of stubborn Space Marine. But I think in some respects, this is one of the best versions of it that they've come up with. And I guess we'll talk about that as we go through the process. But Dark Angels is a really interesting army, one of the most interesting armies from a lore perspective, and just a really versatile, interesting army list that again adds a lot of flavor to the standard Space Marine constructs, I suppose. I mean, Phil, as a non-Dark Angels player, I mean, what's your general take on them when you see them across the tabletop?
I don't think I often do see them across the tabletop. I'm sure maybe we've had 1 or 2 games in the far distant past, but they seem all right. They're kind of cool. Out of the sort of main divergent chapters in terms of Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels, they're probably, I don't know, my second favourite. I would say it's Blood Angels first, Space Wolves at the bottom. Actually, no, but probably Black Templars would be right at the top, but they don't get a proper Codex, unfortunately. They're cool, they're interesting. I like the lore. I like the fact that they've, the Fallen, the Chaos version of them, and that they're kind of hunting them down, and it's all a bit secretive, but kind of game-wise, everyone knows that. It has kind of got a bit of memeified to the point where it's a bit of a tired joke. But it is actually still quite interesting, and they kind of lean heavily in their chaplains, and is it interrogators? I think all that
interrogator chaplains, yeah.
That's all interesting.
And I mean, from a lore perspective, they've definitely gone more down the Knights kind of vibe around it. They've got a number of units now: Ravenwing Knights, Deathwing Knights. A lot of their regalia and a lot of their kind of apparel is much more Knight Crusadery type vibes, with all the robes and all of the maces and everything that they've kind of added to them over the years. Historically, bizarrely, they had more of a kind of Native American vibe to them. At least the Deathwing did, for sure. That was kind of like some of their early, more, lore-based attributes were built around kind of these, more kind of Native American-based rituals and things. So the idea of like the Deathwing was that they painted their armor bone-colored to, reflect death and to essentially mark the fact that they were going into a battle that they didn't imagine that they could ever possibly win. And a lot of their early kind of like illustrations and iconography around the Deathwing were based off of, feathers and other kind of symbols and icons that were much more, as I say, more Native American in origin, which is interesting. So it's been weird how they've changed over the years to become a sort of different version of Black Templars in some respects, which were probably more of the kind of knightly household. But
different kind of crusaders.
Yeah. But I mean, how they've developed, the storyline around the Fallen has been crazy interesting, and definitely one of the most incredible parts of it. And I also really like all of the looming kind of hints and aspects around Lionel Johnson, and the fact that it's heavily hinted in this codex that he is essentially now waiting in the wings to appear at some point. I mean, that's been heavily hinted in multiple books up to this point, but they really do continue to ram home that narrative of Lionel Johnson's fine now. You're just not seeing him yet.
Is he meant to be like sleeping in Caliban or the Rock?
The Rock as it is now, because Caliban has been reduced to ashes, and all that remains of it. Well, not all that remains of it, but a large chunk of what remains of it is the Rock, which is now the fortress monastery, the space fortress monastery of the Dark Angels, which is all very cool. Anyway, look, let's get into the rules and let's get talking about it, because people don't like listening to podcasts to learn about the lore of an army. That's not what people are interested in.
Not what they come here for, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, hopefully not, because I imagine a good amount of what I said there is entirely wrong. Who knows? Wasn't that an old joke? I only know 2 facts about ducks, and both of them are wrong.
Brilliant.
Does that ring a bell?
No, not at all.
No? Okay, fine. Anyway, right. So out of the Space Marine Codex, one of the most important places to start is the Dark Angels Grim Resolve rule. So each time a model with this tactic makes an attack, unless that model's unit moved this turn, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So each time a model with this tactic makes an attack, unless that model's unit has moved, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So basically, stay still, you're +1 to hit. Nice and straightforward. And then each time a combat attrition test is taken for this with a unit with this tactic, it is automatically passed.
Giving the old Krieger a kick to the groin, aren't they?
Well, that's it, mate. That's it. The stubborn Space Marine, comes to the fore once again. So yeah, look, I mean, mechanically, it's actually quite interesting how they've chosen to present and how to, bring that stuff to the fore with these guys. But yeah, they are both very good at shooting should they remain stationary, and they obviously automatically pass which one was it? The combat attrition tests. Yes, the combat attrition tests.
So they still lose a person for failing the leadership. I guess for the +1 to hit also counts in close combat if they're not moving. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So it's not specifically stated that it is a ranged attack. It is all attack hit rolls. So yeah, so if they've remained stationary,
pile in.
They also get +1 to hit in combat.
Yeah, not bad.
That's pretty good. I mean, again, it's not tremendous, but it's certainly not bad. And to be fair, automatically passing combat attrition is probably the most valuable part of that.
Especially if you've got lots of elite units such as Terminators, so where losing one of those is a free wound model and a lot of points.
Well, we'll get to that, because one of the things that we definitely need to expand upon is their detachment abilities. So now, again, as we've kind of alluded to already, one of the things that was historically quite unique and still is quite unique about the Dark Angels is the fact that the impact of being a member of the first company and the second company adds a number of additional rules and abilities to your army. The first company, the Deathwing, are the only company of Dark Angels that know the secrets of the fall and everything that transpired on Caliban. So they know that amount of the Dark Angel Legion had fallen to chaos while Lionel Johnson was away, fighting at the gates of terror or defending terror or involved in some skirmish away from Caliban. And essentially these guys, as a result, are out hunting the fallen in conjunction with the Ravenwing, who also are slightly more in the loop, but they're not members of the inner circle necessarily. Some Ravenwing are, but not all Ravenwing are members of the inner circle. But essentially, for those that are a member of the inner circle, So Deathwing and Inner Circle units in Dark Angels detachments that do not already have the Inner Circle ability gain the Inner Circle ability. So I apologize for that. I've just gotten into reading a rule that doesn't relate to the point that I was trying to raise. But essentially, you gain the Inner Circle ability if you are a unit within the Space Marine Codex that calls out that you gain access to the Inner Circle or Deathwing ability. And you will also gain it if, obviously, your data sheet in the Dark Angels Codex states that you have it. Now, there's a number of units in the Space Marine Codex that gain the Deathwing and Inner Circle keywords, Blade Guard, Terminator squads, anything that's like super duper elite. But for those things that don't come with it by default, you can pay a slight points premium to gain access to it. So you get captains, Primaris lieutenants when equipped with a storm shield, any variant of Dreadnought, Land Raider, Repulsor, Storm Raven gunship, or a transport unit that can transport Terminator models, to which I'm trying to think what that might be. I guess if you had a Thunderhawk gunship or a Mastodon, that could become a member of the Inner
Surely
Circle.
Land Raider?
Land Raiders, yes, of course. Obviously, I forgot that Land Raiders aren't... Land Raiders are referenced as a separate thing there.
Oh, okay.
So, again, they're just covering off some variables, I guess.
Enough,
but
yeah.
Essentially, you can pay points to make these guys members of the Deathwing and gain the Inner Circle ability. There is no benefit to the greater majority of these units gaining the Deathwing and Inner Circle ability. The only models that actually benefit from it in any way is the Captain and the Primaris Lieutenant, because they gain abilities that we'll go into in a moment. But the Dreadnought, Land Raider, Repulsor, Storm Raven gunship, and any other transport that can transport Terminator models is not going to benefit from being this whatsoever, except for the fact that
back stuff, right?
Well, that's actually a negative because, they won't benefit from it because if you're a vehicle, you don't suffer with the stipulation that you can't fall back anyway. If that's what you're talking about.
Right,
what are you talking about?
No, yeah.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting about this and how that works is, and we haven't gotten into it yet, but I may as well just say it now. For Deathwing, you can essentially take a Vanguard detachment, and if every model in that Vanguard detachment has Deathwing keyword, then the Vanguard detachment gives OBSEC to Deathwing Terminator squads, Terminator assault squads, and Relic Terminator squads. So basically, if you've got a Vanguard detachment, everything in it has the Deathwing keyword, you essentially get everything in that unit, everything in that detachment that's a Terminator or Terminator variant, with the exception of Deathwing Knights or Deathwing Command Squads or Deathwing characters gaining OBSEC. And if your Warlord is from that detachment, you get plus 3 command points. So essentially you neutralize the free command point cost of having that Vanguard detachment. And that's stipulated as everything in that squad needs that keyword. So you might have a transport or a dreadnought or something in that detachment, and you might think it's worth paying the 10 points in order to unlock those free command points, essentially. So that's really the only time for vehicles where you might want to spend the extra points to make your detachments, compliant with this first company rule. Make sense, Phil?
Yeah, seems like a worthy trade-off. But I
think so.
I also like the fact that it allows you to create quite thematic armies. Because they get all these extra abilities, so you can lean into the Raven Wing or the Death Wing sort of theme, and it'd be interesting to see if they sort of apply these kind of custom detachments to other armies or even other Space Marine chapters. So, for example, White Scars would really benefit from having something where if you just have a bunch of bikes, then they all become OBSEC, and then you can run a specific White Scar army as well.
And what's kind of cool about this is that, I mean, it's been available in other codexes, not to this extent, but I think the Drakari had their Real Space Raiders or whatever they were called, which was 3 separate patrol detachments counted as one thing. Yeah. And but beyond that, they haven't really done an awful lot of it. So I think yeah, it's a promising sign. I hope they do more of it. And I think it's a really worthwhile thing to give to the Dark Angels, because there's so many people out there who have Deathwing or Ravenwing army lists that are going to massively appreciate this.
Yeah, it's actually very similar to what they were doing briefly in, I think it was 6th edition, or maybe 6th and 7th edition, before the special detachments came along, where they did specific detachment builds of, if you take X number of elites that contain these units. So one of them was a Tyranid build, another one was like all Death Riders for Krieg. So if you took a ton of Death Riders, they all became an OBSEC and got a bunch of abilities as well.
I mean, that's been pretty commonplace, certainly for the Dark Angels, but for lots of armies over the years. So there's always been a way to make a Ravenwing army, or at least there has been ways to do Ravenwing and Deathwing armies since probably 3rd, 4th edition. They've always tried to add that flavor. It used to historically be, if you're, if you have a Space Marine captain on bike, then bike squads become troop choices, that kind of thing. Whereas now it's a little bit more.
Yeah, because the other one was the Elder Bikes.
The Elder Bikes?
Yeah, like just taking.
Well, bizarrely, they were always just troop choices for ages until recently. An example would be if you took a 10-man unit of Wraithguard, they became a troops choice. That was an old Elder stipulation. So Wraithguard normally came in like units of 5, but if you took a 10-man unit of Wraithguard, they became a troops choice, which was always a bit mad, because back then a single Wraithguard model, which was these horrible little metal ones that they had back then, which I've got a lot of nostalgia for, but they don't look nearly as cool as the new ones. They were like £10 each in 2000 and 2005. They were £10 each, and that was so like a whole unit of 10 was like £100, and it's like, wow, that probably isn't worth it. But anyway, there you go. As an expansion to that, or as an extension to that, second company is essentially if you have an Outrider detachment, any bike squad and Outrider squad unit in this detachment gains objective secured. And like with the first company, if your Warlord is from this detachment and everything within this detachment has the Ravenwing keyword, you get +3 command points, which is nice as well. Obviously, noting that you can only draw a Warlord from one of these detachments. So if you want to do a combination of Ravenwing and Deathwing still, you're going to have to pay 3 command points for one of these detachments. But at least you don't have to pay 6 CPs to run the army. Yeah. It's not too awful. Another stipulation, and it's worth highlighting, an army can only contain 1 Ravenwing captain and 1 Deathwing captain. The logic being that there is only 1 captain of the first and second company. So you can't have multiple detachments with multiple Ravenwing captains unless those detachments are derived from a successor chapter. So you could theoretically have Angels of Absolution and Dark Angel second company detachments, and in doing so, one of them could be the master of the Ravenwing from the Dark Angels, and the other one would be the master of the Ravenwing from the Angels of Absolution. But unless you're
so their super top secret inner circle isn't as small as you think if every single successor chapter has their own inner circle.
Well, and again, not to get into the lore stuff, but Dark Angels are unique in so much as every Dark Angel successor reports into Azrael. So the Grand Master of the Dark Angels is also the leader of the Unforgiven. I think they're called the Unforgiven. Now you're asking me to remember names, but he's the overarching leader of all the Dark Angel successors. So no Dark Angel successor chapter is beyond his control.
Okay.
And again, that's all the weird secret stuff that goes behind the scenes of the Dark Angels army, which is weird because of the fact that they've got Primaris Marines. And I don't understand why Dark Angels have Primaris Marines, because they're so secretive. And essentially, the idea of a Primaris Marine coming into Dark Angels is odd to me. I accept the fact that Gilliman told them they had to have them, but I still doubly don't understand why the Dark Angels would invite them into their inner circle, so to speak. That's the thing that just flummoxes me.
Well, I think like fighting for 100 or a couple of 100 years potentially, then maybe they've earned their spot. Although it was
I
weird
disagree.
because obviously during the Indomitus Crusade, it was like 200 years later. Yeah, they're all cool with it, but now that's been retconned to being like 15 or something. So maybe they would still be a bit more. Oh, we're not sure about having you in there just yet.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well,
why?
If you go, if they cross the Rubicon and they go from old school to Primaris, that makes total sense. But yeah, maybe completely brand new people. Well, there's also
I
two
don't
types
even
of
understand why
Primaris.
Dark Angels would do that. Like, I just don't get it. Dark Angels are too secretive to get involved in this stuff, which is why, for me, I will definitely not put Primaris Marines in my Dark Angel army. But even if I would entertain it, they will never ever have any Blade Guard or anything that apparently is a member of the first company, because I'm just like, no.
So
no,
you wouldn't
no.
take Blade Guard, even though they're quite good.
No, not for Dark
Mhm.
Angels, because Dark Angels and Primaris don't work to me. Like, I understand, like, if you have some Primaris Marines that you hurl out into space to, go and, have a fight with someone that they don't think they're going to win. Like, by all means, use them as cannon fodder for the Dark Angels. But the idea that the Dark Angels would actually trust Primaris Marines confuses me massively.
I would say there's two reasons why. One, as I said, if they were already inner circle regular Marines, so like Terminators, and then they get upgraded to Primaris, surely you would trust them. The other one is what happens when, because obviously some of them were like Heresy era Space Marines, so therefore also they were original Dark Angels sucked into a tube for several thousand years and then popped out. No, not even.
Watch with me. Like, if I was Azrael and I was running the Dark Angels, I'd be like, nah, mate, not a chance. Get out. Like,
too untrustworthy.
Well, here's the thing, right? When a Tech Marine goes off to Mars to become a Tech Marine, they don't let Tech Marines in the inner circle because they're too close to Mars, because they're like, nah, we don't trust you. We don't trust you anymore because you've gone to Mars for an extended period of time and come back, and now you just sit out over there and fix everything. But you never see a Tech Marine in the inner circle.
I can just imagine like a Tech Marine is fiddling around with an inner circle Land Raider, fixing it up, and everyone's all of a sudden like, shh, quit, but keep it quiet. He's around. We'll have this conversation later on.
Yeah,
it's schoolboy.
Like, I would imagine that the Dark Angels would have a disproportionate amount of Primaris Marines getting signed up to the Death Watch. I imagine they would just be all being sent off to horrible missions. Like, I cannot get on board with the idea of Primaris Marines should be beneath the Scout Company. Like, it should literally go like, the 10 companies of the Dark Angels, and then just be like, oh, and then some Primaris guys that we just hurl at people just because,
that's a bit unfair.
I don't think so. I don't understand why the law...
Surely there's got to be now. I mean, I don't actually know, but surely new Primaris aren't just coming from Mars. Some of them are, here's your new gene seed. These are coming, you're making them yourself. So the Rock
I just don't think it's
creating new Space Marines.
I don't mind it for any other chapter. Even the Space Wolves I'll stomach it for, but not the Dark Angels.
Not my precious Dark Angels.
It's not about being precious, because I mean, honestly, like it's not about being precious. It's the fluff. It's the lore of the army. It's the way that they are presented in the lore. It's like there is no one more secretive than the Dark Angels. So the fact that they've just opened up their inner circle to Primaris Marines drives me crazy.
Whereas my Minotaurs are like, come on, boys, we're all getting new and shiny.
Yeah, but there's no guarantee that those Minotaurs are the old Minotaurs. Like, you have no idea which version of Minotaurs they are.
Well, even they don't know. Anyway,
exactly. The Minotaurs are a mess.
That's how they like it.
Yeah, exactly. They just don't know what's going on. There could be there could be hundreds of Minotaur chapters. They have no idea. They're just going around doing the High Lords of Terror's bidding. But anyway, look, we've gone off on a tangent, as is our want. But that's just my rant about Primaris Marines in Dark Angels. I don't agree. At least I definitely don't agree if you're going to put them in the first and second company, which I will never do. Never. Not with Dark Angels.
So what? Not even? Well, actually, no. I was going to say not even Outriders, but I don't know if Outriders can become Ravenwing.
Yeah, they can, but Not in my Dark Angel armies.
Fair enough.
Stay away, Outriders. Get out. Anyway, right, let's talk about some other stuff they've got, right? So, Sons of the Lion. Units with this ability have the following abilities, which are described below. Speed of the Raven, Fire Discipline, Implacable. So, Speed of the Raven. While the Devastator Doctrine is active for your army, add 3 to the move characteristics of Raven Wing models from your army. Ooh. Raven Wing units from your army are eligible to shoot with in a turn in which they advanced. Each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack in a turn in which it advanced, that attack suffers the penalty incurred to the hit rolls as if it were firing an assault weapon. Ooh. So there you go. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Pretty tasty. Sorry, was that is that just the Devastator as well? The last bit
that is
where
the Devastator's Doctrine just for the Raven Wing units, yeah.
Not bad. Makes them as good as White Scars for that first
Exactly.
turn.
For the first turn. In addition, you've got Fire Discipline, which is a Deathwing ability. Sorry, not a Deathwing ability. It's a regular infantry ability. While the Tactical Doctrine is active for your army, infantry models from your army, excluding Deathwing models, can make attacks with rapid fire and assault weapons, excluding blast weapons, while within engagement range of enemy units, but must target an enemy unit that is within engagement range of its own unit when doing so. In such circumstances, the model can target an enemy unit even if other friendly units are within engagement range of the same enemy unit. And while it is making such attacks, it has a ballistic skill of 5+. Noting that I'm not entirely sure if they've ever queued this or not, but I don't know if that stacks with Grim Resolve. So if you remain stationary in a fight, your BS becomes 5+. So theoretically, with Grim Resolve in effect, you're hitting on 4+ because you're getting the +1.
I would assume that's how it works.
Yeah, I would too. But I mean, again, it's not specifically mentioned. But then Grim Resolve is +1 to hit. This says you've got ballistical 5, therefore you'd be hitting on 4s, right? But again, I don't know if they're FAQ that at some point, but I would read it as them hitting on 4+.
Yeah,
assuming they didn't move.
It's weird because hitting on 5s is understandable. 6s would be pointless. 4 is pretty good, but yes, you're right. It means they can't move, so they can't consolidate and pile in. But I mean, this is pretty tasty. It's a really cool thematic one. It's like the sort of thing Krieg should have because shooting into combat was their jam. So yeah, I mean, this makes the standard Dark Angels pretty cool, like a really interesting build. I've heard the term banded around Green Wing. No, I don't know if that's like a legit thing or just like a nickname.
That is a nickname, yeah. So it refers to anything that's not Raven Wing or Death Wing. It's Green Wing because it's green Dark Angels.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. And the last one is Implacable. While the Assault Doctrine is active, your army for your army, each time a Deathwing Infantry or Deathwing Dreadnought model from your army makes a melee attack against a character unit or a unit that contains any model with a wounds characteristic of 8 or more, you can re-roll wound rolls.
Tasty.
Pretty good, right? Pretty good. Big old unit of Deathwing Knights smacking people around with maces that they're re-rolling to wound with.
Yeah, that is good.
So I love this. It's cool that they've added flavor. It's cool that they've given Dark Angels players 3 different super doctrines. It's a lot to remember.
Yeah, I'm already a bit confused, but it is odd that I'm just trying to think. So, for example, White Scars, like they get their normal chapter tactics of, they can advance and charge and advance and shoot their assault weapons with no penalty. But that's their main thing. And then the other thing they get is in the assault doctrine, they get an extra. Oh, their damage becomes 2 or +1, and that's it. This is like a ton of extra rules, and this isn't even all of them because we've got some.
Oh God, no! This is just the super doctrines, right? Yeah. So at this point, right? So for the army, we've acknowledged that Deathwing models get Inner Circle. Raven Wing models get a rule we haven't even talked about yet called Jink. They've all got Grim Resolve, which is what we've outlined from the outset. In addition to that, they have a few extra stipulations that we discussed about Ravenwing captains and other bits and pieces. So there's lots and lots and lots and lots of different things that you as a Dark Angels player needs to be mindful of in pretty much all moments. And yeah, let's talk about Inner Circle and let's talk about Jink, because those are really the main super duper awesome rules. So Inner Circle essentially is given to anything that has the Deathwing keyword and fits certain other criteria. So if this unit has the Grim Resolve chapter tactic or has the Inheritors of the Primarch successor tactic, and it is using the chapter tactic of Dark Angels, then each time a morale test is taken for a unit, it is automatically passed if it has Inner Circle.
Yeah.
So
a small
not
benefit because you're already passing combat attrition.
You are already passing combat attrition.
But you are saving
But
yourself
now-
that one person.
Yeah, now you don't even have to worry about that one guy. It's literally auto passes, which is madness. Now, what's really interesting about that is affecting all units with the Inner Circle ability. So, to the best of my knowledge, now I'm going to have to flick through and double check. Sorry. Where are the Black Knights? Black Knights. Where are the Black Knights? I've lost the Black Knights. Deathwing Knights, Samael. Anyway, I'm pretty confident that the Black Knights also have the Inner Circle ability. And what's interesting about that for the Terminator squads is, if it's Terminator squads are infantry, so they gain an extra ability, but the Black Knights do also benefit from always passing morale tests, basically, which is pretty amazing. While this unit is within engagement range of any enemy fallen unit, unless this unit has the vehicle keyword, this unit cannot be selected to fall back. So should you find yourself in a rare instance where you're fighting against someone with the Fallen, you can't fall back from combat. I don't think that's ever going to come up. Unless Dark Angels become super, super good and people realize that there's a hilarious gimmick you can make by making a tooled up Fallen character and just throw them into, like, Terminator squads or whatever, just to stop them from being able to do anything.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so where are the rules for the Fallen?
So the Fallen rules at this moment in time are in... Oh, now you're asking. They're in one of the Psychic Awakening books.
Oh, okay, so they're not in this codex. Like you would have thought almost.
No. So Fallen are... They're in the Chaos Space Marine Codex as a unit, or... And obviously... what's his name now? Famous Fallen guy with the hood and the two pistols.
Cypher.
Thank you. Yes, Cypher is a member of the Fallen, obviously. And at the moment, there's just one Fallen unit called the Fallen, and it's essentially like a Dark Angels veteran unit of old. But that's it, really, for the Fallen. So I was under the impression, and I'm hopeful that at some point they'll just make the Fallen another chapter of Chaos Space Marines, but at the moment, that's not the case.
Well, I'm almost surprised they didn't include them here and basically give them like their own sort of chapter tactic. Go, you can take these units, but obviously you can't take Primaris units, for example. So it's more old school. Because I think on the whole, they tend to not be portrayed as like super corrupted. They still sort of look like regular Dark Angels, or you could at least play them as regular Dark Angels and just go, here's your evil twin variant of them. And that'd be really cool, because if they had some really cool rules, you might see lots of people take a Dark Angels army and go, I'm actually going to play them as Fallen, and therefore you get this kind of cool dynamic between Dark Angel players and sort of pseudo Dark Angel players playing them as the Fallen. So actually you see the Fallen more, and it is one of those things where it's really cool rules, really cool interaction between these two thematic armies, but you'll never see it because no one's playing the Fallen, because they're not really an army and no one really adds them to a Chaos army.
Well, people used to use Cypher a lot, but they don't really these days. So unless he gets a change to become something more interesting. But I would love if Games Workshop just made the Fallen one of the choices for the Chaos Space Marines, right? If it was just a case of I could be World Eaters, Emperor's Children, Fallen, that'd be quite cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that's something they should do, to be honest with you. But anyway, yeah, so if you happen to be in a fight with Fallen, you can't fall back. The irony. And then each time you select this unit to fall back, unless it has the Vehicle, Raven Wing, or Chapter Master keywords, roll 2d6. If the result is less than or equal to the unit's leadership, it can fall back. Otherwise, it cannot fall back and must remain stationary instead. So yeah, basically you have to roll an old school leadership test, and if you pass it, you get to fall back. If you fail it, you have to stay still. Which
I assume you're going to do, because what's the leadership of most of these squads? 8 or 9?
Well, I mean, the Terminator squads are going to be leadership 9, I think, or maybe just leadership 8.
It's going to be pretty easy to pass unless you.
Yeah,
I mean, but it might be that
right?
thing of it. 90% of the time you'll pass it, but that one time where you really want to get out of combat, you'll probably fail it.
Almost certainly. And then the most important rule for the Inner Circle: each time an attack is made against this unit, if this unit has the infantry keyword, and that's important, infantry keyword, an unmodified wound roll of 1, 2, or 3 always fails, irrespective of any ability that the weapon has and the model making the attack has. So they can only be wounded on 4+.
So that's basically free transhuman physiology, which is pretty.
That is correct. Yeah. So
decent.
They are sporting transhuman physiology all the time.
Like, for a lot of units, you're saving yourself. Is it 1 CP most of the time, or
2 CP for transhuman? Yeah.
Oh wow! So that's a ton of CP you could be saving every single turn, and the fact that it applies to every unit in the Inner Circle, which could be.
Well, not every unit in the Inner Circle.
Sorry, infantry only. Yes,
infantry only, because it does. So it doesn't apply to Raven Wing Knights or Black Knights. Sorry, not.
Are they the bike versions then?
Yeah, so the Black Knights are the plasma talon or plasma gun bikes with the Corvus hammers.
Okay, but weirdly
they have the Inner Circle keyword, but they aren't infantry, so they don't get the.
Right, I get you.
They can't wound them on 1, 2, 3 scenario, or can't wound them on 4. Yeah, look, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying. But they do get Jink. And what is Jink, I hear you say? Well, if the unit has the Grim Resolve chapter tactic, you heard all this before from the Inner Circle. But models in this unit have a 5+ invulnerable save against ranged attacks in your movement phase. If this unit remains stationary, it loses this invulnerable save until the start of your next movement phase. So what's good about that, and the way they've worded it, is you don't need to have moved turn 1 in order to get it. So essentially, you've got a 5+ invulnerable save turn 1, but if you don't move in your turn 1, you lose it. So if you go first and you don't move, you lose your 5+ invuln. If you go second and your opponent's shooting at you, you still have a 5+ invuln because you neither moved or didn't move in your movement phase, which is the nice way of bringing it all together. And Phil. And each time a unit advances until the start of your next move, your next turn, models in that unit have a 4+ invulnerable save.
Pretty tasty.
And if you remember, Phil, in your Devastator Doctrine, you can advance and still shoot.
Oh, yeah.
So you can advance.
You get an extra, isn't it? 3 inches?
3 inches, yeah. So these guys are movement 14, extra 3, 17, plus D6. In fact, no, they're turbo boost, so it's a flat 6. So they are moving 23 inches and get 4+ invuln.
That is engage on all fronts for days.
Engaged in all fronts for many days.
All the days of the turns.
All days, all the engagements.
It's a cool rule,
it's a very good rule.
Yeah, I like the fact that it also works from sort of turn 1 if you didn't go first, because quite often those sorts of rules, your opponent would be like, well, I'll just target them first because they haven't moved. So, haha, you don't get your rule.
Yeah.
So now that kind of counteracts that. I think that's a nice little addition.
Yeah. Yeah, so the wording, again, to be specific, is models in this unit have a 5+ invulnerable save. In your movement phase, if that unit remains stationary, it loses its invulnerable save. So if you haven't had a movement phase yet, you haven't had the option. Therefore, your 5-up invuln is still in effect.
Yeah, I guess that rule kind of goes against the Grim Resolve one of getting +1 to hits if they don't move. So it's like they've got this cool benefit instead of that, because even when they're in combat, they still want to be moving just to get that invulnerable save, I guess. Is that how it's going to work? Am I going to be like, I'm piling in? Oh no, it's your movement phase though, isn't it?
In your movement phase, yeah.
So, so you can't do that at all. So once you're stuck in combat, you're going to lose your invuln.
Theoretically, yeah, but I mean, it depends. There are stratagems and things that you can do to get around it. Obviously, you can fall back still, and that's going to give you your 5-up invuln. But you also have abilities where you can leave combat via stratagems and still do things, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, Ravenwing is super interesting because they've got lots and lots of things that benefit the fact that they're moving around, and it counteracts the implied negatives that you would receive as a result of not bringing Grim Resolve into effect. So it's really good. And then Inner Circle is super strong. Everyone can agree that Inner Circle is super good. The amount of doctrines they've got is really interesting. I just think, again, I mean, there's a series of abilities and a series of ideas for this army. It's got a lot of stuff. I mean, it's really layered. You can do a lot of things with it. It's super open to interpretation by players to build and design armies that they want to, create. If you're a big fan of just Ravenwing, you can go to town with Ravenwing. If you want to do the mix of Ravenwing, Deathwing, you obviously can. And then when you want to start adding in the Greenwing stuff, as we've established they're called, you can also add a lot of flavor to it that way, which is super exciting. So no, I like it a lot. I think as the series of rules goes for the Dark Angels, this is one of the more interesting versions of their rules that they've enjoyed in many years. So I mean,
really nice and thematic, and I sort of wish all armies have these kind of, not necessarily abilities, but the ability to build really thematic armies. And it seems like that's one of the design philosophies potentially that they're doing this edition. So that's pretty interesting. I have one question. So, because I've seen a few people talk about this online about how it's really strong, but they've also been talking about taking successor chapter tactics while also taking Inner Circle, which I believe is incorrect, right? Because
that is incorrect. Yeah,
you need Inheritors of the Primarch or Grim Resolve, which means you're a first founding chapter. So you need those two to gain Inner Circle.
Either or.
Yes, sorry, one or the other.
Yeah.
One thing I don't understand, and it's because I haven't really experienced sort of these sub factions and then successors of them. So, for example, let's say you want to be a successor chapter to Dark Angels. How do you take these units? Because if you look at, for example, let's find one.
In your own time, Phil.
No, I know. I'm just trying to. What's the Terminators called? What are they called?
Deathwing Terminators.
So the Deathwing
or Deathwing Knights.
Yeah, the Deathwing Command Squad, for example, has the Dark Angels faction keyword, as opposed to the like chapter in brackets keyword. So how can you take these as a successor chapter?
So,
or is there a special rule that says?
You've sort of stung me there, Phil, in terms of successor chapters and specific war gear options or specific things. To the best of my understanding, and you're going to make me need to fish around the book in a moment, but to the best of my understanding, that is accounted for somewhere within the writing of this codex. I'm now going to just have to. Should we do the? Let's hold for 5 minutes. Let's hold for. Let me do the sound effect that says we're coming back in a moment. Here we go.
2 hours later.
So thanks to Phil, we fished around, and there's a nice section called Successor Chapter. Who would have thought? There's a bunch of stipulations around it, all broadly stating the same thing. But for the purpose of data sheets, this is what they say. With the exception of named characters, you can nominate any Dark Angels units from your army to be from a Dark Angels successor chapter. If you do, replace the Dark Angels keyword in every instance on its datasheet with the name of your chosen successor chapter.
Ooh. Well, that's
and this
good.
applies to chapter-approved rules, detachment abilities, stratagems, warlord traits, psychic powers, chapter relics, with the exception of relics that are specifically available to Dark Angels. If you want to take a Dark Angel-specific relic for a successor chapter, you have to use a stratagem to unlock that relic. Otherwise, you're just gaining access to the standard suite of options. Crusade rules, whatever those are, and data sheets.
Brilliant.
So there you go.
Cool. Well,
That's how that works.
Yeah, I was quite curious all day about that, and now I can teach those people online that they've done it wrong. I think in fairness, I was partly wrong because I didn't think people could take anything but Inheritors of the Primarch, but I wasn't sure how the keywords worked regarding the data sheets because I was like, how can you take the Terminators if the keyword is Dark Angels? But
so in those instances, you change the Dark Angels keyword across to again Angels of Absolution, for example, or the Fallen, if you want to call your successor chapter the Fallen. And then ultimately you can then give them any successor tactics that you want from Codex Space Marines. But if you want them to gain Inner Circle and Jink, they need to have the Grim Resolve or the thingy of the Primarch ability in order to gain access to that specific rule. Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, geez, like if I wanted to go, not that I really care too much about Terminators, but if you just like a lot of Blade Guard, you might just go, I'll take them as a successor for Dark Angels, and then they've got Transhuman for free. That's pretty cool.
Well, it depends. Again, as long as you make them Dark Angels.
Yes.
Or so you can't give them you can't give them a series of abilities other than the Dark Angel abilities.
Oh,
but
yeah.
If you wanted,
you've got to take the Inheritors of the Primarch, for sure.
Yeah. But you could do that, right? Because you could take 3 units of Blade Guard. You could take 3 units of Blade Guard, a Blade Guard Captain, or a Blade Guard Lieutenant. Make the Blade Guard Lieutenant a member of the Deathwing, and then you could take that as a Vanguard detachment and make that guy your Warlord, and then you wouldn't have to pay the CPs for it.
Is the Captain by default Inner Circle, or do you have to upgrade him as well?
So he's a 20-point upgrade to become Inner Circle, and the Lieutenant's a 15-point upgrade, I believe.
No, you're spot on. Yeah, it's just because they said Captain, and I know the data sheets, there's like 6 different captains depending on all your choices, which is super confusing.
So it's the Captain keyword. Whatever variant of Captain you make Deathwing. So you can make any Captain a Deathwing Captain. So you could even take the Captain in Phobos armor and make him a member of the Deathwing. Phil is drinking a tea right now in contemplation of what I said.
This is how serious we take these things. It doesn't seem right. A Phobos captain would be hanging out with all these boys in Terminator armor, but I guess so.
Well, he fancied a change of clothes that day. Although, again, what doesn't seem right, Phil? Let's be honest with ourselves.
Primaris.
Stinking Primaris captain being in charge of the first company. Get it? No,
get out with you and your Phobos armor. What you doing?
Yeah, or just any of it. Exactly. You slightly taller monstrosity. Get out of here.
Speaking of data sheets, should we move on to the looking at some of these data sheets?
Well, before we do that, let's talk about their what are they called again? The secondaries. There you go. The secondaries that they get. So they've got a Purge the Enemy secondary, a No Mercy, No Respite secondary, and a Battlefield Supremacy secondary. Their Purge the Enemy secondary is a martial interdiction. I don't know what this is. If you select this objective, then after both sides have deployed, but before first turn begins, your opponent must select one character model from their army. If their army does not contain any character models, then they must select their warlord instead. Score victory points at the end of the battle as follows. Score 6 victory points if selected enemy model was destroyed by a melee attack by a Dark Angels model from your army. Score 3 additional victory points if the selected enemy model was destroyed by a melee attack made by an inner circle or Deathwing model in your army. Score 6 additional victory points if the Dark Angels model's unit that destroyed the selected enemy model has not itself been destroyed. Ooh.
This seems pretty good.
It's all right. It's dependent, obviously, on what character your opponent chooses.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So, firstly, it's martial interdiction. That's for
Thank you. I sort of said that, but I butchered it.
Yeah.
Close.
If you build to it, so you've basically got to go. I'm either doing this if I'm Raven Wing or Inner Circle. But if you go Inner Circle,
Death Wing or Inner Circle,
Terminators, they can all teleport around. Sort of regardless of who you're going to pick, I can probably drop down near them, shoot his mates, and then charge into him and try and smash his face in. And then if you're a bunch of Terminators, you're probably going to stick around long enough to hopefully score those sweet extra 6 points.
Yeah, quite possibly. So it's pretty good.
I think it seems pretty good. Very thematic. I like it.
I mean, Purge the Enemy is always one of those really, really good secondary trees anyway, because it's full of good options. So I don't know if Purge the Enemy is especially better than anything else. Martial Interdiction. Is it better than, say, Assassinate or Bring It Down? But, it's an option, right? But it's a good option in a series of good options. And I think when you're looking at secondaries, you're more likely going to already be able to pick a standard option for Purge the Enemy before you need to turn to the chapter-specific ones, which is where No Mercy, No Respite, or the Battlefield Supremacy options might become more valid. So for No Mercy, No Respite, it's Death on the Wind. I suppose that's something to do with someone having let wind in a particularly, vile manner. Although I would imagine that's probably more of a Nurgle. Yeah, exactly. Score 2 victory points each time an enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by Ravenwing models from your army that moved 12 or more during the movement phase of that turn or made a charge move that turn. So score 2 victory points each time an enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by a Ravenwing model unit that moved.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking this wasn't very good, but actually, because it's not related to combat, it also includes shooting or combat.
Yeah.
It can actually be pretty good, especially if you were doing a build of, I'm just going to take lots of bikes. And it's
each time as well. Yeah. Each time. So it's not score 2 victory points at the end of the turn if this has happened. If 2 Ravenwing, 3 Ravenwing, 4 Ravenwing units killed 2 free units in a turn, 6 victory points.
Yeah. So you only need to kill 6 units to get 12. So you need
to kill 8 units to get 16, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless the other person's like super elite, that doesn't. I mean, it depends on how heavy you're going into the Raven Wing.
If you have an all Raven Wing army, you're going to do this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and there's an argument for taking an all Raven Wing army when this exists.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is, as everyone has been saying, Outriders are really good. Bikes. Actually, how do Outriders get the Raven Wing ability?
They just do.
But it's not.
Do you want me to go and actually explain it to you? Right. So if you go to page, hang on, where's bleeding page is it on? Fast attack. Here we are. Attack bikes, squadrons, bike squadron, scout bike squadron, outrider squadron. There you go. On page 165 of the Space Marine Codex, Outrider datasheet, amongst its abilities is listed Ravenwing. If this unit is from a Dark Angels chapter or one of its successor chapters, it has the Ravenwing keyword.
Okay, right, yeah. I think I was, because I was looking at it earlier and it obviously had Ravenwing, but I didn't clock that, because I was maybe looking for Jink and going, well, it doesn't get this ability. But obviously it's given that ability by being Ravenwing.
Correct.
Elsewhere in the Dark Angels Codex. So, okay,
yeah, so the Dark Angels book specifically stipulates if you're Grim Resolve or a successor chapter that happens to have Grim Resolve ability, you gain Jink, assuming that every wing in the army, blah, 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 and you have the Raven King.
Yeah, I mean, I think bikes are a bit sort of good for the meta, or good in the current meta. They're like durable, they're really fast moving. Do they also get OBSEC as well, did we say?
Yes, they do, as long as you take them in one of the
Yeah, the
Outrider
detachment,
detachments
right? Yeah,
that only contains Ravenwing.
it's like it ticks all the boxes, basically. I guess.
Can I say though,
Go on.
controversially, I think regular bike squads are better for Ravenwing. Not just because I'm hating on Primaris, I just think the normal
You can take them
Ravenwing
in numbers, can't you?
Well, so for 150 points, you get 3 Outriders. For 150 points, you get 5 regular bikes. Now, the regular bikes have 1 less wound and technically 3 less attacks if they charge. But yeah, so they've got 1 less attack on profile, 3 less when they're charging, because Outriders get this devastating charge ability that gives them +2 to their attacks on the charge, plus they get Shock Assault, which gives them the +1, and they've got 4 attacks on profile. No, 3 attacks on profile, but 4 when you factor in the chainsword. But the regular bike squad can also take the chainsword as well. But yeah, you get 5 bikes for 150 points, and they have a total of 15 wounds, whereas the 3 Outriders have 12 wounds. So you're getting 3 extra wounds and 2 extra bodies, which is better for spreading the unit out and claiming multiple objectives, for example.
Yeah, not bad.
So I actually think, in the case of the Ravenwing, I would argue that you take regular bikes. Not least because Primaris don't belong in the Ravenwing.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep banging that drum. But yeah. And then lastly, you've got Battlefield Supremacy, which is Stubborn Defiance. If your first command phase, in your first command phase, select 1 objective marker at the end of each of your command phases after the first. If you control that objective marker with a Dark Angels unit from your army that has the objective secured ability, score a number of victory points based on the consecutive number of your command phases that you have controlled that objective marker with that unit. So, basically, get a thing with OBSEC, so a unit of Terminators, plant them on an objective that you chose, and sit them there for the entire game. And if you do that, you'll get 15 victory points. If you stay there for 1 turn, you'll get nothing. If you stay there for 2 turns, you'll get 2 victory points. If you stay there for 3 turns, you get 5. If you stay there for 4 turns, you get 10. And if you stay there for 5 turns, the entirety of the game, you'll get 15.
This seems really easy to do because most people can control their sort of home objective because there's either 1 in your deployment zone or 1 very close to your deployment zone. And if you can't hold that for the whole game, you've probably lost anyway. So this almost feels like the no-brainer. I mean, it might be slightly harder to do if you were going all Ravenwing because you really just want to be pushing forwards. This one feels like it's really good if you're doing kind of classic Dark Angels where you've got some regular Green Wing Marines, as we're now calling them. Yeah, to have a couple of one or 2 decent units in your backfield. You've just scored yourself 15 points with ease. It also is one of those things where you can pretty much score it by doing nothing, and it's on the onus of your opponent to take those points away from you. And that's no easy thing, especially if you've done the objective closest to you.
Yeah. I mean, the stipulation is that it has to be an objective secured unit. It has to have objective secured.
Yeah.
So you are talking either any of the various troop choices or a Ravenwing bike squad or a Deathwing Terminator squad that is part of a very specific detachment.
Or you give your Warlord or take something with a Warlord trait that gives OBSEC. Or a
Do they have that?
Well, in the standard Marine book, yeah.
Oh, if that's in the standard Marine book,
is it? I think it's called like Rights of War. I think there's a standard Warlord trait which can give OBSEC to, I think it's within 6 inches. And there's the chapter, what are they called? The chapter command banner ancient, the upgraded version. His banner is an OBSEC aura as well.
Oh, yeah.
So there's two ways in the standard Marine Codex that you can do it. I was having a read up last night. And I was like, oh, these are cool combos, aren't they? Yeah, because everyone online that I've seen has been going on about the standard Warlord trait, but I sort of felt like the Banner Ancient version was actually a better option.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the standard warlord trait is pretty. I suppose it's consistently good, but yeah, the
Well, it doesn't
yeah,
cost
the banner
it
seems.
doesn't cost points to upgrade your banner ancient to the
Hmm.
like command version.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. On the topic of warlord traits, just to add to the confusion, how many warlord traits do you imagine the Dark Angels have, Phil?
Well, 6 is the standard amount, so that's what I would guess.
10.
Of course.
10 warlord traits. Technically 11 because they've got a warlord trait in the standard Space Marine book as well, but let's not talk about that. So they've got 10 warlord traits, 4 of which are exclusive to Deathwing Ravenwing, so 2 for the Ravenwing, 2 for the Deathwing, and then you've got 6 other ones. So here they are. Brilliant Strategist. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if the Tactical Doctrine is active for your army, then the Devastator Doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead. So basically, in your command phase, you can select one friendly Dark Angels unit within 6 of the Warlord until the start of your next command phase. You can roll them down into the Devastator Doctrine. So if you're in the Tactical Doctrine, you can put them in the Devastator Doctrine. If you're in the Assault Doctrine, you can put them down in the Tactical Doctrine. Now, where this gets interesting, really off the out of the gate, is if you're doing Ravenwing and you want to benefit from that extra 3-inch move and the ability to advance and shoot, you can essentially have a Warlord with Brilliant Strategist, and then obviously turn 1, you're doing that. Then turn 2, he can roll you back into the Devastator Doctrine where you can continue to advance and shoot and add 3 inches to your move. And you can do that you can have the Devastator Doctrine 3 turns for 1 unit of your Ravenwing, which is pretty good, isn't it?
Well, I think you're slightly wrong there because
Why?
It says
Why am I wrong?
It says it's specific. Basically, it says it's specific for the attack. So even though it lasts for the turn, it doesn't. So it won't count for the movement, is what I'm saying for Ravenwing.
Ooh. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if the Tactical Doctrine is active in your army. Ooh. Coming at me with your words.
With reading.
I know. Oh, well, there you go. I made a wrong assertion about that. Oh, that's less good.
I mean, it's good for shooting, though. So if you've got lots of heavy units and most of your army's in tactical and you want to shoot that plasma, for example, heavy plasma, maybe, in the Devastator Doctrine, then that's pretty cool.
All right. Less good than I thought it was, but still a thing. Next on the list, Fury of the Lion. It's an aura. Ooh. While a friendly Dark Angel unit is within 6 of this Warlord, if this Warlord has made a charge move, has charged, or is performing a heroic intervention this turn, add 1 to the strength characteristic of models in that unit. Ooh.
It's not bad. Six
it's not bad, but you're not going to take it, are you?
I don't know. If you're taking a load of, Blade Guard, Assault Intercessors, this is all pretty...
Remind me, does the multiple happen before the plus? It does, doesn't it? So it multiplies then plus.
Yeah.
So essentially, if you were strength 4 with this, with a power fist, you would become strength 9.
Yes, because you become 8 and you go +1, yeah.
Yeah, fine. So you could theoretically wound Imperial Knights on freeze.
Aggressors, with all got their fisties.
Yeah, aggressors, or obviously Deathwing Knights, which we haven't... Oh, sorry, yeah, Deathwing Knights, which we haven't talked about yet, but they've got their maces, which are really good.
Nice.
So they would get something good out of that.
There's options.
I wouldn't take it, but it's not without its uses. Caliban Knight, or Caliban Knight. Each time this Warlord makes a melee attack against an infantry or biker unit, an unmodified wound roll of 2+ is always successful. It's pretty interesting.
It's all... Oh, it's only the Warlord, though.
Only the Warlord. And essentially it means that you would have to tool him up with a weapon that gives him loads of extra attacks but isn't particularly high strength. So maybe there's a combo there with the Teeth of Terror.
Yeah, because that gives you plus 3 attacks, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be good with the Teeth of Terror. But outside of that, I'm not really sure that, again, it depends what you're going to take it on, right? I mean, maybe a captain on bike or... captain on bike with this would probably be the best option, I would imagine, with the Teeth of Terror. So they're not bad. Stubborn tenacity. When this warlord is destroyed, if it does not explode, I can't think of any warlords that explode in their army. But...
It's I can't remember the name of it. It's one of the vehicles, the jets flyers, the Raven.
Oh yes, of course, the Talonmaster. The Talonmaster. Yeah, he could explode. You can use this warlord trait instead of using any other ability that take effect as a result of that model being destroyed. If you do, this warlord is not removed from play until the start of the next turn or the end of the battle, whichever comes first. Until that happens, it is still considered to be in play, but any further wounds this warlord would lose are not lost. So essentially, as a mechanic, it will stay alive until the end of that turn. So examples where this is useful, you could be doing a mad charge into something that is going to overwatch you to death. So for example, you could be charging into a unit of aggressors with all flamers. You know that that's not going to go well for you, but you still do it anyway. And yeah, surprise, surprise, they kill you, but you're not yet dead. And then if your warlord is equipped appropriately, they will get in there and then do a lot of damage in return for their life. So it could have its uses, right, Phil?
Yeah, so the other one I can think of is if basically you get killed before you get to attack in close combat. And it
is also true,
is better than the banner. So that obviously goes off on a 4+. And then when you get to attack, you only get to do one attack, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
So obviously if you've got a character that's got like 5-6 attacks, this is way better. I guess the only time it doesn't really come into effect is... you've already attacked, and then they just kill you when they go second, and then you stick around for there's no turn left. I guess because they got rid of the stratagem where you could fight twice, like fight again at the end of the turn, because that's now intercessors only, or assault intercessors, right?
No, characters still have it. So but it's only if you die now, essentially.
Yeah.
So and that is the same as this. So for 2 CP, you can get the same ability in that situation. I suppose where this adds the extra layer is in those Overwatch scenarios and other situations that are very situational, but still interesting. It's an interesting mechanic. I like it. It's not an auto include, but it is interesting. Then you've got Decisive Tactician. While friendly Dark Angel core units are within 6 of this model, or this warlord, sorry, add 1 to their advance and charge rolls. Quality. It's a good one.
Good if you're doing Ravenwing.
Oh, good if you're doing Deathwing, because you're coming down, and then you only need to roll an 8-inch charge rather than a 9-inch charge.
That's true. Good point.
And also, if you're charging into a building, technically you only need to do a 7-inch charge. If the guy's up a floor.
Oh yeah, no, that's true.
Because geometry always the coolest words to introduce. And then the last one is Honor of the First Legion. This warlord is eligible to perform heroic intervention of up to 6 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically. Each time this warlord makes a heroic intervention move, so long as it ends that move closer to the closest enemy model, it can move up to 6. All other rules for heroic intervention still applies. So there you go. 6-inch heroic intervention is actually really good. Can take a lot of people by surprise. It's interesting. And then Ravenwing warlord traits. You've got lightning fast reactions. Each time an attack is made against the warlord, subtract 1 from the attack's hit rolls. So all right, not especially incredible, but -1 to hit is no bad thing. Noting that that's all attacks, not just melee attacks, and it's melee and ranged attacks basically. So -1 to hit is no bad thing. And then you've got Master of Maneuvers. This warlord is eligible to either shoot or charge in a turn in which it fell back. I think if you're going to be taking Ravenwing, that's the thing you're going to be taking if you're going to be choosing a Ravenwing warlord trait. What do you reckon the Ravenwing warlord traits, Phil?
Well, -1 is really nice, especially when it's shooting and combat, so it's going to keep him alive a lot longer. The falling back one is a very kind of cool gimmicky mechanic which can allow you to zip around the board a bit and maybe grab objectives, but it is only a warlord, so I don't know how often you want to be falling back and like have him out on his own as opposed to having a squad with him. But then if he's in combat and the squad that's nearby and you want to fall
Mm.
back behind them, that could be quite useful.
Well, I think if you're looking at like the Talon Master, for example, I think there's some viability in that option. If you're getting in a fight and then you know that you can move back and still shoot or charge, it's pretty strong because obviously the Talon Master is armed to the teeth with guns. So he's got the twin assault cannon, twin heavy bolters, but also he's no slouch in combat either. So it's pretty good for those guys. So I like that. I think the Ravenwing did pretty well there. And then Deathwing, you've got Watched, which essentially is a Deny the Witch done from anywhere on the board, and it always succeeds. So essentially, if you're trying to get off a precious psychic power fill and my Deathwing Warlord is somewhere on the board, not necessarily within 24 inches of the casting Psyker, I basically go, nah, and I automatically deny you. But it's once per game.
That's mad good, but very situational.
Yeah, it's mad good if you're up against that one Elder army that desperately needs to get Doom or, Quicken or whatever it is off to do some shenanigans.
Orcs with the jump, for example. Yeah. Like some armies do rely quite heavily on key psychic powers, so this could be like a real game changer.
Yeah,
but as an all-comers warlord trait for like going to an event might not be that good because you might come across loads of people that don't have psychic powers, in which case it's just gone to waste.
Agreed. Especially when you consider that the other warlord trait is the inexorable. Yeah, we'll go with that. Each time an attack is allocated to this warlord, subtract 1 from that attack's damage characteristics to a minimum of 1. So good. As we've seen with the Death Guard.
Dreadnought.
Well, Dreadnought and a Death Guard. I mean, imagine, right, Deathwing Commander in Terminator armor. You can only wound him on 4s. You could give him that relic. I forget what the relic's called now, but it's the thing that gives you feel no pain 5+. So you could give yourself the 5-up, feel no pain, because there's a specific relic that gives you that. It's like the Crozius Arcane, not the Crozius Arcane. Anyway, the point is it's a thing that gives you 5-up, feel no pain.
Is that a generic Space Marine one or the
generic Space Marine one? Yeah, but it's also in the Dark Angels book. It's just a special issue War Gear piece. Right. But yeah, so you can give him the 5-up, feel no pain, make him -1 to damage. You can only wound him on 4s. That's a very survivable character at that point.
Oh, that's for Artificer armor.
No, Artificer armor is a 2+ armor save and a thing. I think it's the Crux Terminatus. I think is what it's called. Is it the Crux Terminatus?
No, Artificer armor's 2-up save, 5-up invuln.
Yeah, that's not the thing I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'm talking about the 5-up feel no pain, or not 5-up shrug or whatever they call them these days.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to bring it up in our end of show chat. Where's this term shrug come from? I've seen it bandied around a lot recently in the last 2 weeks. It seems
tabletop tactics, mate.
Okay, because I was wondering.
Or at least that's where I got it from.
A secret community of people deciding what these terms are. I've always called it feel no pain, but shrug seems to be the new cool term that everyone's using. Yeah,
I've heard it bandied around by the guys over at Tabletop Tactics. I was watching one of their battle reports the other day, and they kept saying shrug. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot more sense than saying feel no pain all the time, because feel no pain implies that
wordy.
Well, it's not even that it's wordy. It's just that it implies you have an existing understanding of what that meant.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah.
So adamantine mantle is one.
Thank you. The adamantium mantle. That's it. Or adamantine mantle, not adamantium. That's a totally different fictional universe. But yeah, so you can make a very survivable character. So I think warlord traits they've done okay out of. I think there's some good warlord traits out there.
Yeah.
I think they aren't necessarily the best warlord traits. I think they're usable. But I think we would probably be kidding ourselves as Dark Angels players if we tried to suggest that they possessed the bestest of all warlord traits. But they do what they can with what they're given. Which is fair enough. Probably, though, the thing that everyone is saying is bestest about Dark Angels is their psychic powers, Phil. Have you heard this on your, trawling the internet?
I have. I've heard everyone saying they're mad good.
Yeah, so let's talk about those.
They're right.
Are they right? Are they? Fair enough.
No,
You're just
pretty
coming
good.
out and saying it.
Yeah, 100%.
100% agree. Okay, well, you've got Mindworm, which is a malediction. Mindworm has a warp charge of 6. If manifested, select one enemy within 18 of the Psyker. That unit suffers 1 mortal wound. And until the start of your next psychic phase, in the fight phase, that unit is not eligible to fight until all other eligible units from your army have done so.
What the?
Really good. I mean,
Yeah.
not much more you can say than, yeah, it's all right.
There's there's not many sources of sort of making a unit fight last or making your units fight first. There are some, like the Judicar.
Yes.
Is it
Judicar.
Whirlwind with a stratagem? Can do something similar, I think.
A whirlwind?
A Whirlwind.
Really?
That's apparently. I've heard it from several places. Check that.
You're well
check
connected these days, Phil. You're getting all the intel.
Well, it's called research, doing your work, being a professional.
Are you suggesting that I don't research, Phil?
You don't. You rock up. You open that book and you.
I rock up. What are you talking about? Are you making me out to be flipping Joe? What is this?
I mean,
My
you were
God.
10 minutes late today.
I was 10 minutes late today. I was watching an especially good episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, I see. Well, I
just had to see to the end of it. It was so funny.
Well, I was sat here in my shed in freezing conditions. It's like being in a fridge or freezer.
Well, I was ready to go at 7:30, Phil, but you told me that you weren't available until.
I had to eat.
Well, look, I mean, you're making your statements. I'm making mine. So I went and watched an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm that took a few minutes longer than I thought it would. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, aversion. There you go. Kind of like what we just did there. Is a malediction, has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 24 of the Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, whilst that unit is within 6 of this Psyker, subtract 1 from the attack characteristics of models in that unit. And each time models in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So noting that one of those abilities is stipulated based on its proximity to the Psyker. So while that unit is within 6 of this Psyker that performed the aversion, you are taking away 1 attack. But regardless of the distance that the Psyker is between itself and the unit affected, that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from said attack roll. It's pretty good, I'd say.
Oh yeah, like you can really nerf like some killer units with that, especially like when you combo it with your free transhuman that you're already getting.
Yeah, as long as you're within range, losing 1 attack is massive. -1 to hit is not that big, but yeah, losing an attack is huge. Then you've got righteous repudiation. God, these words, Phil. Repugnance doesn't sound like a thing that you would say, right? Righteous repugnance, but all right, fine. I thought it was something more. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Blessing, righteous repugnance has a warp charge value of 7. If manifested, select one friendly Dark Angels unit within 12 of this Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack, you can re-roll the hit rolls and you can re-roll the wound rolls. What? What is that? Why have they given them that?
I mean, they do make librarians well good now. It's like they've turned it into a souped-up chaplain.
That is madness, isn't it? Like, okay, cool. Here's my 10-man unit of Deathwing Knights. Oh, I'm re-rolling hits and re-rolling wounds now. Yay!
It's like a super captain and an even superer lieutenant had a baby.
Yeah.
And it became a psychic power.
That is so good. It's a terrible name, but it's such a good psychic power, especially when they've got access to things like Deathwing Knights.
Yeah, seems really good.
They're hitting on 2s, wounding most things on 2s.
I mean, it is a warp charge. It's a warp charge value of 7. So
oh no! How will I ever roll a 7 on 2d6?
Well, I mean, 7 is the statistical average, so
yeah,
you're going to get it off most of the time, but there are chances of it. It's not like it's guaranteed to go off. Basically,
I mean, you can make him a chief librarian and then add +1 to it, so then it's only actually a warp charge 6 effectively.
True. Yep.
And you can take a Space Marine relic where you get to. Oh no, there isn't. There isn't. Oh no, is there a space? There is a Space Marine relic for the chief librarian that lets you re-roll for free as well. I think.
Ooh, that'd be good.
I think I'm making. This stuff
if you've
up.
done your research, you would know.
Well, I've got the book by my side here, Phil. Hang on. God, dear, oh dear. I wasn't expecting to have to dive into very specific librarian-based conversations.
I mean, you're the one that, mentioned this combo, not me.
Well, it's true. I should have been aware of it in preparation. Right. Master of Sanctity, no. Chief Librarian. A relic. Increase the range of the bearer's psychic hood. Okay, fine. So I made it up. There's no such thing.
I mean,
you can increase the range of your psychic hood. That's what you can do.
I think listeners need to be aware that anything we say could just be made up.
I mean, that's always a possibility.
We're not a voice of authority here. We
try not to make stuff up. When I'm attempting to make stuff up, I'll make it very clear that I don't know or that I'm guessing.
That's fair.
Unless I don't. Anyway, then you've got ability number 4. Phil, do you want to pronounce that for me? Because I'm giving up all hope in terms of pronouncing these words.
Trephination.
Oh, yes. Trephination. Oh, yes,
I've got no idea what that one is. I have to say, Games Workshop is really good at coming up with, not making up words, because I'm sure this is the real word, but they do find the most obscure words in the English dictionary to use, like really archaic terms.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
So now we're going to tell you about the Trevor Nation. That's how I'm going to say it out loud. Trevor Nation. Witchfire. Trevor Nation has a warp charge value of 5, so not very much. If manifested, the closest enemy unit within 18 of the that is visible to the psychic suffers D3 mortal wounds. If the result of the psychic test has greater than the leadership characteristic of the enemy unit, that unit suffers 3 mortal wounds instead. It's like Super Smite, but better.
Well, depends on the leadership of the other thing, right? If it's 6 or 7 leadership, then yes.
Well, even if it's leadership 8.
Actually true, because it's 11 to get Super Smite?
Yeah, it's 11 to get Super Smite. So you're hugely increasing. And admittedly, Super Smite is D6 rather than D3.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but the amount of time... But I'd take flat 3 damage.
Yeah, that's good.
Because guaranteed 3 is better than D6 in some respects, especially given the fact that if you're shooting this at... leadership 7 models or leadership 6 models, if those are around. I know there's certain variants of like demons and things like that.
Things must be.
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty good.
Is Snotlings a thing still? I don't think they are.
No, Snotlings aren't a thing. Grots are a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe. What are those little plaguey men? Little plaguey goblins. Nurglings. Nurglings are leadership 6, I swear.
Are you sure? Because demons.
I don't know. I could be making it up.
Demons normally have really high leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Maybe they're leadership 10 then. Who knows? I mean, someone out there knows these answers.
Yeah.
Maybe you should make your own podcast rather than worrying about what we're saying. Anyway, Engulfing Fear is a malediction. Engulfing Fear has a warp charge value of 7. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 24 of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic models in that unit. Yeah. That unit cannot use the objective secure ability or any similar abilities that allow them to control an objective marker, regardless of the number of enemy models within range of that objective marker. Yeah. If the result of the psychic test was equal to or greater than the unit's leadership characteristic, that unit cannot perform actions. If that unit is currently performing an action, it immediately fails. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's a good ability.
Well, both of them are good abilities. The fact that you switch off OBSEC on a unit and you stop them from doing an action is weird. There's very few actions that they wouldn't have already completed.
No, they do exist.
There are some where they sort of wait until their next command phase, in which case you can interrupt it, which is pretty cool. But also, I think they can't then do an action in their following turn, because this lasts until your psychic phase.
Well, and that's assuming that you've rolled equal to or higher than their leadership, though.
Yeah,
right?
But that could be a pretty good one to do.
It's pretty great.
Because if they're on an objective, for example, and you're also on it, and they're troops, and either you're troops, but they've got more, for example, and they're also raising.
Raising guard?
No, I was going to say
raising wing,
raising the banners, but I don't know if
raising.
I think raising the banners actually happens. Does that finish at the end of your turn?
So yeah, to complete the action, it finishes at the end of your turn, but you don't gain the points for it until your corresponding, or not corresponding, but your next.
Yeah, so you couldn't switch that off, but you could potentially stop them from raising the banners if they haven't already, and they were going to, for example.
But also, if you've got someone else who's playing Dark Angels and they're doing that secondary where they've got to stand on a thing with OBSEC, you can turn their OBSEC off, and then they go back to not controlling it, and then they go back to.
So if you're doing double Dark Angels, one of these being the Fallen,
yes,
then a great combo
exactly. Sure. And the last of the psychic powers, Mind Wipe, is a malediction. Mind Wipe has a warp charge of 7. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 of the psychic, then select one aura ability that unit has until the start of the next psychic phase. That unit loses that aura ability. Goodness gracious.
Jeez, that's good. I mean, out of all of them, there isn't really a stinker, right?
I mean, you're probably not going to prioritize engulfing fear for most of your builds because it's very matchup specific.
Switching up objective secured?
But you're only switch. Yeah, but it's a warp charge of 7, and switching off OBSEC at a range of 24 is useful, but it's useful, but it's not incredible. It's like one of those things where it's good, but on average, you're probably going to lean more towards things like, I don't know, you're going to lean towards any of these other ones. I think Mind Wipe is just immediately more obviously better.
No, I think you're right in terms of switching off for OBSEC is really useful, but switching off someone's aura ability could be devastating for that opponent, depending on what the unit is. But potentially some armies don't have much aura abilities, like Guard don't really have any except some leadership bubbles. It's like, cool. But then, who knows how their Codex is going to look whenever that comes out. Like their whole orders thing might suddenly become aura dependent, in which case all these things could get switched off.
I think for a lot of your builds, though, you're probably going to see people using the Righteous Repugnance ability because it's just too good. The ability to reroll hit rolls, reroll wound rolls on a unit is too strong. You're going to use that all the time. And then
surely you can take librarians that can take 2 powers, right?
All librarians can take 2 powers,
Well.
and smite. And then if you make them a
chief librarian,
then they get. Or actually, I think you have to take a relic to give them an. Anyway, I'm making this up again, Phil. Don't make me make things up again. To be honest with you, though, Phil, just take Ezekiel. He's so good. Take Ezekiel.
Oh yeah, I heard because he's only like a handful of points more, and he's super good. Doesn't he get +1 powers as well?
Yeah. So Ezekiel, right? I mean, points wise, let me just get to the points section. Tell you what he'll cost you.
Does this mean we're going into the data sheets now?
No, not necessarily. But I mean, we can do. I mean,
segue into Ezekiel.
Well, I kind of wanted just to talk about some stratagems super quickly. Just to go through them super quickly, right? So let's talk about some good stratagems. Wrath of the Lion is a stratagem in your command phase. If a combat doctrine is active for your army until the start of your next command phase, each time a Dark Angels model from your army makes an attack with a weapon specified by the active combat doctrine, an unmodified wound roll of 6 improves the arm penetration characteristics of that attack by 1. This is cumulative with the bonus from the active combat doctrine. You can only use this stratagem once. That's 2 CP. That's actually quite cool. There's another stratagem, which I'm trying to find. No, it's not that one. It will be... Basically, there's another stratagem where you can move them into another doctrine as well. I think it's tactical... No, not tactical. Guidance... Oh, where are you? Not tactical appraisal. The strategy command phase select with target 6 of the warlords. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, tactical appraisal. Use this stratagem in your command phase. Select 1 Dark Angels unit from your army within 6 of the warlord. Then select 1 combat doctrine until the start of your next command phase for the purposes of that unit. Treat that combat doctrine as being active for your army instead of the active combat doctrine. You can only use this stratagem if every unit in your army has the combat doctrine ability, excluding servitors, ancients of the Imperium. or agents of the Imperium, sorry, and unaligned. So yeah, so that one's actually quite cool. So you can essentially go for 1 CP, you can go, cool, you're now in this doctrine, which is pretty nice for sure. One of the stratagems that is noticeable by its absence, by the way, is the ability to teleport in Terminators within close proximity of Ravenwing. That's been quite a common tactic for Dark Angels, or rather Deathwing and Ravenwing, for as long as they've been a thing. But it was even a stratagem in the Index, but they don't have it anymore. So they've gotten rid of the ability to bring down a unit in close proximity to Ravenwing. Probably my favorite stratagem, noting that they have a bunch of stratagems that benefit Deathwing and Ravenwing. So, for example, there's a stratagem where you can fall back with a unit after you've fought. So it's called like Swift Strike. And you use this stratagem in the fight phase after a Ravenwing unit in your army has fought. So essentially a Ravenwing unit charges in, smacks someone around, and then immediately falls back. So that will be a 14-inch move after having fought. So you can throw a unit in, hit them, and then not have to worry about any reprisal. You can literally just hit them and then for 2 CP run away, which is quite amazing. And then there's also stratagems that boost the damage of guns for like Deathwing, and there's all this other kind of stuff. Target guidance is another interesting one for Ravenwing land speeders. So if you've got a Ravenwing land speeder, you use this stratagem in the shooting phase. Select one enemy unit with an 18 that is visible to a Ravenwing land speeder or a Ravenwing storm speeder. Unit from your army until the end of the phase. Each time a model in a friendly Dark Angels unit makes a ranged attack against that selected enemy unit, add 1 to the hit rolls. So essentially, you can add 1 to your hit rolls for your entire army, as long as that unit is being spotted by a land speeder. That's actually quite a nice ability, right, Phil?
Yeah, that's really nice. And obviously, you like land speeders as well. So
I do like land speeders.
Is that
true.
old land speeders or even the new ones as well?
Oh, do they? Because the new ones are called storm speeders, I think. I don't think they have the land speeder
keyword or not.
Let me just check. Storm speeder. Yeah, they've got storm speeder keyword, so it's specifically land speeders that do this.
Good thing you've got 6 of them.
I've got many. But my favorite stratagem for the Dark Angels, Phil. Can you guess what it is?
I'm having a quick look.
You're having a quick look. You're trying to think, what could Dan's favorite stratagem be?
I'm going to guess it's this one because it's on the page I'm looking at. Is it Deathwing Assault?
No, it's not Deathwing Assault. It is Secret Agenda.
Ooh, it sounds like a Maelstrom card.
It does sound like a Maelstrom card, but it's better than a Maelstrom card. So 1 CP, Phil. Use this stratagem after selecting secondary objectives or agendas. Do not reveal one of your selections to your opponent. The first time you score points or experience points for it, reveal it to your opponent. Note that you must still have a record of your selection. We recommend you write it down and conceal it until you need to reveal it. You can only use this stratagem once. Now, this is one of the most Dark Angel-y awesome things, because essentially, Phil, I could be playing against you and I could go, okay, cool, I'm going to take Assassinate, deploy Scramblers, and engage on all fronts. But what I could then do is I could be like, I suppose a better example might be While We Stand, We Fight, for example. But Assassinate works as well. I could basically go, cool, I'm going to pick these ones and I'm going to make Assassinate secret. Now, what's interesting about Assassinate, if you actually read how it's written, you don't score points for Assassinate till the end of the game. So you tally up everything at the end and then you work out. So a lot of people do running totals for Assassinate because it's convenient. But the actual literal wording of that rule, as with Bring It Down, as with a number of things, is you score at the end of the game. And in those instances, you can keep those secondaries under a secret agenda for the entirety of the game without having to reveal them to people. So that has huge tactical implementation in terms of how you interact with your opponent. Because ultimately, if Phil doesn't know what I'm trying to do, then he can't make tactical decisions to protect certain things. He can't make tactical decisions to go aggressive against certain things. So if I did while we stand, we fight, Phil might not be aware of that, and as such wouldn't know that in order to score a bucket load of points, all he needs to do is kill, this unit, and this unit. So I think in that respect, Secret Agenda is probably one of the most powerful stratagems they have. Yeah. What do you think, Phil?
I think it's really cool. I'm surprised it's not, because it says it's to do with secondary objectives or agendas. And if I recall, not that we've ever done it, agendas are specific to Crusade. I'm almost surprised this isn't a Crusade specific thing, because it is so sort of thematic. But it is, like I said, it could be quite powerful and a bit broken. Like, it's open, not necessarily open to abuse, but could be when you're at an event. But just game wise, it's actually quite strong, I think.
Yeah,
like you said.
I mean, unless you're a budding magician, I can't imagine there'll be too much exploitation that you could do. I mean, maybe if you learned a bit of sleight of hand and you came with, a number of different, playing cards or something, that you could be that devious that you go, right, well, what's the best thing for me to pretend that I had all along out of a pool of options?
I can't see people really doing that, but you never know.
I can't either, but I'm just saying, unless that is what you're going to do, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I would recommend anyone doing this in a tournament setting, just very transparently write it and then put it down next to the visible thing. Yeah, or you write it down and you just give it to your opponent. Like, you just go, cool, I've written it down. It's in an envelope. I mean, God, putting in an envelope is probably a step too far. But if you did that, then it gives a certain level of security to both participants, and you just go, there you go. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But,
was there not something like this in the Dark Angels Maelstrom deck? I sort of
correct. So in Dark Angels Maelstrom, you could keep every Maelstrom card, with the exception of ones that your opponent could score secret.
Yeah, that was it. It was in the Codex, but it was specific to the Maelstrom card.
Correct.
How we miss Maelstrom. But it's
back soon, Phil. Back soon.
I know, exactly. Maybe next week. It's really, really cool one. I didn't spot that one.
It's my favorite stratagem by far. I mean, okay,
thematic, so I do like.
Yeah, and it's also, but it fits the Dark Angels perfectly, because you can be doing stuff that people wouldn't understand. And when you actually look at the selection of things that don't go off till the end of the game, there are some really, really good secondaries that you can keep hidden. And, your opponent genuinely will be making a number of tactical decisions based on what that secondary is. Like, you could give the impression, and again, depending on how much you game this, you could obviously give the impression that while we stand, we fight, is the thing that your opponent is trying to do. And they could fight really hard to try and defeat or try and kill, 3 units that are objectively the most expensive thing. And then you could reveal at the end that all along, all you were trying to do was, I don't know, not deploy scramblers, but assassinate or
can
something.
I guess you can't do something. So let's say you didn't take... maybe not deploy scramblers, didn't take raise the banners, but as an action, could you still raise the banners?
No, so anything that involves an action. So, for example, if you were to take the Dark Angel specific ability where your opponent has to select a character, then obviously you can't keep that secret, because you have to, even though you don't technically need to reveal it, you still have to say to your opponent, select a character. And then it's relatively obvious what you've done.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that one combos really well with this one, because they don't know that you're gonna come for them. But as you say, if you've got to select a character, well, I guess you could say I'm selecting a character. They don't know whether it's. Well, no, I guess.
Well, no, your enemy has to select a character.
Yeah,
but then you could go for a double bluff. But then, are you going to? Is that acceptable? I mean, this is a topic that I wanted to talk about in a future episode about the stratagem system. I.e., is the stratagem system now at a point that we can no longer treat it as anything other than a gotcha system? Because I feel like with the stratagem system now, it's too impossible for everyone to remember everything. So you almost have to resign yourself to the fact that it's a gotcha system. But that could be a topic for another time. Maybe we can wrap it up into the outro. But yeah, that to me is still an interesting one. I would highly recommend, if you're using Secret Agenda, don't do things to your opponent to misguide them or to mislead them aggressively. Like, there are subtle tricks that you could possibly do that give an impression without basically being obvious. But yeah, don't sort of do things that give the impression that you're doing something that you're not, because I think people will get very frustrated with you very quickly. But yeah, at the end of the day, being seen to be overly protective of a unit might give the impression that you were doing while we stand, we fight, and that could be gamed. But there's a fine line, as everyone knows.
Yeah, you don't want to mislead people, but you can twirl your moustache and laugh manically.
Yeah. And I love it mechanically because it's basically completely changing the landscape of the game for your opponent. Having a Secret Agenda is probably one of the most powerful things these guys have. Yeah. Because it gives you just an extra layer of control, which is amazing. Right, okay, cool. We've talked for an awfully long time. Let's get into some data sheets. Phil, are there any specific things that you wanted to talk about?
No.
Fine, all right.
Honestly, well, I'm happy for you to lead on these. You are the Dark Angels expert, I guess.
Well, I have been known to be. All right, fine. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about Deathwing Knights, because you can't talk about the Dark Angels book without talking about the bestest unit in it, and arguably the Deathwing Knights are that. So the Deathwing Knights, for those of you who don't know, is a squad of Terminators that are armed with Storm Shields and the Mace of Absolution, with the exception of their Knight Master, who has the Flail of the Unforgiven. They are Terminators, so they're movement 5. Their weapon skill and ballistic skill is 2+, Phil. 2+! And I imagine you might be saying, oh yeah, but they got a big crazy hammer. Maybe they're -1 to hit, and that's why they've made them weapon skill 2+. But Phil, that isn't the case at all. Their mace is essentially a power fist with damage free, so it's a thunder hammer with no minus to hit.
What?
I know.
Madness.
So that's why they are considered the most amazing unit, because they've all basically got thunder hammers, but they're not minus to hit. They hit on 2s. They've got 2 attacks each, free when they charge. And they've got 4-up invuns, 1-up saves technically, because they obviously get +1 to their 2-up save for the Storm Shields. They are very tasty. And also they've got inner circle, so they never take morale tests. That you can only wound them on 4s. They're very good, Phil.
Does the flail also pass its damage on?
Correct. So the flail is strength +2. So it's a strength 6 -3 2 damage weapon. But each time an attack is made with a weapon, excess damage inflicted is not lost. Instead, keep allocating excess damage to another model in the target unit until either all excess damage has been allocated or the target unit is destroyed.
Like edition again.
Sigf edition again, man. Or Age of Sigmar, I suppose.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's a really cool ability. I think
it's very cool.
Death Guard have something similar.
They might do. I can't remember what it might be, even though we only talked about recently.
Yes, flail thing as well,
Yeah. So yeah, Flail of the Unforgiven is amazing. The Mace of Absolutions are amazing. Storm Shields are amazing. They get access to Watchers in the Dark, which is essentially a Watcher in the Dark. Is once per battle, this unit can attempt to deny the Witch as if it were a Psyker. If the model attempted to manifest the Psychic power is a Chaos Psyker, you can reroll the Deny the Witch test. And that's it, basically. So it's a once per battle ability with the Watcher in the Dark. So essentially it gives them a Deny the Witch for 5 points.
What you're forgetting, though, is what I really like about that is they give you a little designer's note that they say you should use the little Watcher models and put them next to it and then take them off once you've used it, so you know. And they go, it's a model, doesn't count for anything game-wide. It's just a token. And I kind of like that they're using these extra little models to add a bit of lore and detail to the army.
It's really cool. It's really, really cool. And it's a great unit. I mean, points-wise, it doesn't cost you the earth either. I mean, they're more expensive than a standard Terminator squad, as you can imagine, but they're not going to break the bank. Forgive me. Let me just get to the point. It's a bit. I should have laid this out better. I've got stuff all over the place right now. Here we go. So they are Deathwing Knights are costing you the princely sum of 47 points per model. So 235 points for a unit of 5.
What's expensive?
It is expensive, but you are getting a boatload of attacks hitting on 2s, wounding most things they charge into on 2s, and at -2 flat free damage.
Yeah, and if you really
and you can obviously
re-roll everything.
Exactly. With just the aid of a psychic test, you're re-rolling all the stuff. The other unit that obviously a lot of people are going to be looking at is the Deathwing Terminator Squad. Now, one of the things I'm going to throw out there just to say, right, the reason why the Deathwing Terminator Squad has always been a beloved and good unit is its ability to mix and match armaments. So a lot of people historically have essentially taken Deathwing Terminator squads to be able to take a mixture of close combat and ranged weapons. And there usually was a number of interesting synergies that you could do because of combat squadding, essentially. So you could go, this guy's got a Thunderhammer Storm Shield, this guy's got 2 Lightning Claws, and these guys have got Storm Bolters, these guys have got Plasma Cannons. This is the only Terminator squad that can have Plasma Cannons, as far as I'm aware. So there is a number of things that you can do with Deathwing Terminators different from regular Terminators. And you can also give these guys a Watcher in the Dark for 5 points if you want to have that Deny the Witch stuff. But I'll be honest with you, for my money, for my army, personally, I don't think gaining a Watcher in the Dark and the opportunity to take a Plasma Cannon is actually as good on balance as having a Teleport Homer, because a Deathwing Terminator squad doesn't get a Teleport Homer, but a regular Terminator squad does. And if you take a regular Terminator squad, they basically become a Deathwing Terminator squad. The only difference between the two of them is that the Deathwing Terminator squad has access to Plasma Cannons and a Watcher in the Dark and can mix and match their stuff. But if you're going to take all Storm Bolters and Cyclone Missile Launchers, which to be honest with you is one of the strongest options, you may as well just take a regular Terminator squad, because they gain the Deathwing keyword, they gain all the Inner Circle stuff, and they get a Teleport Homer for free, or it's 5 points for a Teleport Homer. Either way, Teleport Homer is way more worthwhile having than a Watcher in the Dark, in my opinion, because especially with the way this army functions, the ability to withdraw back into your deployment zone is much stronger than that Deny the Witch, which is much more circumstantial, I would say. But I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
That poor Watcher in the Dark being left in the dark.
In the dark, yeah. I mean, I like the Watcher in the Dark, and I think it has a place. I just think, I mean, again, you'll mix and match depending on your taste. For me, my Terminator squads are just going to have all Storm Bolters and Cyclone Missile Launchers. So 2 Cyclone Missile Launchers, and then everything else is Storm Bolters, because Storm Bolters and Power Fists, because everything in the Terminator side of things really benefits from being armed with that, especially when Deathwing Knights are so good at what they do. If you're going to take Thunderhammer Storm Shields, you're going to take Deathwing Knights. And if you're not going to take Deathwing Knights, you may as well just take a regular Terminator Assault Squad rather than doing the Deathwing Terminator Squad. Because for me, it's just gets a bit too muddled when you start mixing these units up. I think like as soon as you start adding extra bits to these units, it just gets a little bit too weird. So for me, I think genuinely the Deathwing Terminator squad is great if you really want to take those Plasma Cannons and you really want to get your Watchers in the Dark. But I would argue that the Teleport Homer is better. But what do you think, Phil? You've listened to me talk about it. What do you reckon? Phil, you've actually just muted yourself instead that time. There you go.
Amateur.
Amateur.
I was going to ask because with the Deathwing ones, they can all take Cyclone Missile Launchers and Storm Bolters, right? Can regular Terminators also do that?
So they can't. So they can't all do it. For every 5 models, you can take a Cyclone Missile Launcher.
Okay, but is that
Yeah,
the same for both, or is
that is the same for both? Yeah, the same heavy weapon stipulations apply to both.
Mhm.
The differences is Deathwing Terminators get access to plasma cannons, and you can add lightning claws or Thunderhammer Storm shields into the unit.
Okay,
Make sense?
yeah. And then what does the teleport Homer ability do again?
So the teleport Homer. Let me just grab the Space Marine Codex, just so as I'm not misquoting it.
Codex?
Not Relic Terminator Squads. The Terminator Squad. Teleport Homer. Once per battle, at the start of your movement phase, you can remove this unit from the battlefield, and then in the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, you can set this unit up on the battlefield anywhere wholly within your own deployment zone and more than 9 away from any enemy models, or anywhere within 6 free or friendly chapter models, and more than 9 from any enemy models. If the battle ends and the unit is not on the battlefield, it is destroyed. If this unit has split into 2 units because of combat squad abilities, only one of those units can use the teleport Homer ability.
No, pretty good. Yeah, nice little bit of jumping around. Yeah, I sort of see your trade-off options. Like, that could be quite handy.
Yeah. Well, because essentially what you do is you send the unit in, get them stuck in, and then when it gets a bit hairy, pull them out. And, have them back in your
deployment. I guess with their
5-inch
movement, you don't really want them stuck on one side of the board, having killed everything, and then they're completely out of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the teleport Homer is, on average, the better option. It's always been interesting to me that Deathwing Terminator Squad just didn't get access to it, but the reason why they don't get access to it is that that's not included in the kit, but it is included in the standard Terminator kit. So that's basically what has created that situation. But yeah, so Deathwing Terminators, great squad. I still will probably run my Terminators as Deathwing Terminators here, there, and now and again. But majoritively, I'll probably just use them as regular Terminators because I just think they're the better option. The Deathwing Command Squad is kind of interesting, although again, not as interesting as some things. So this squad doesn't get access to OBSEC, but it is a really handy unit because they do have the bodyguard special rule. So essentially, they're the exact same as regular Terminators or regular Deathwing Terminators, but they are bodyguards. So while a friendly Dark Angels character unit has a wounds characteristic of 9 or less is within 3 of this unit, any models cannot target that character unit with ranged attacks. So basically, irrespective of how many Command Squad Terminators you have, you cannot target a Deathwing character or a Dark Angels character while they're within 3 inches of these guys, which is super useful. And if this detachment includes a Deathwing Terminator captain unit, then one Deathwing Command Squad unit can be included in your detachment without taking up a battlefield role. So you can add these guys to your army without losing an elite slot. So if you're looking to, get a lot of elites in, these guys will not take up a slot. And if it's worth mentioning, in addition to all that, if you take a command squad, your Deathwing Apothecary and your Deathwing Ancient and your Deathwing Champion do not take up elite squads either, because they're allocated to being part of that command squad.
So you can really ram in that Vanguard detachment full of all the Terminators that you could possibly want, basically.
Correct, yeah. And, there is an argument to taking the Terminator Ancient, if not exclusively because of the relic that is available to Deathwing Ancients. So Deathwing Ancients have access to a relic that make a core unit within 6 of them. So you select a unit, and then they become -1 damage. So they become like Death Guard, basically. So you can have a big 10-man unit of Terminators, and then you can make them -1 damage.
That's filth. Especially since you can do, what was it? There's a Warlord trait that does that exact same thing. So you could have a squad plus the Warlord in Terminator armor also with that, and full transhuman. And is there a way of making them -1 to hit as well by some reason?
You could take a Ravenwing Dark Talon, which to the best of my Sorry, not Dark Talon. Sorry, Dark Shroud, which, to the best of my understanding, gives every Dark Angels unit -1 to be hit, not just Raven Wing. Trying to find. Where are you, you pesky blighter? Come on. Where is it? I've not got it
I
here.
think so. It's got stasis bombs, hoverjet.
No, you're looking at the Dark Talon, mate, not the.
Oh, sorry. What was the one you said?
Hang on, let me look it up on the app. I'm being. I've turned my phone off. I'm pretty sure that gives a -1, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about the Dark Shroud. But, irrespective of all that, it's a pretty horrendous combo that you can essentially do. You can basically make a big 10-man Terminator squad that will never run away, can only be wounded on 4s, can -1 damage, and obviously if you put an apothecary next to them, can shrug on 6s.
Yeah, pretty good. And bring people back.
Bring people back as well, yeah. What a treat, eh?
No, pretty good.
Everyone's favourite thing.
It's weird because, you were saying for most of 8th edition, bring Terminators back. Terminators rubbish. They're iconic. Make them good.
Yep.
And now, 9th edition, everyone is raving about Terminators.
Yeah.
But
Which is amazing.
Do you think people would take Terminators just in Dark Angels, or do you think generic Terminators are good enough just on their own?
I think generic Terminators are just good enough on their own, but I think they're especially good in Dark Angels and Death Guard.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two flavors of Terminators that you're going to consistently see. But I think Terminators just being free wounds are just good. I use them in my Blood Raven army as well. I think they're great. I love Terminators. I am so happy that Terminators are good again. It is a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, make Terminators great again, and it's.
Well, they have.
Exactly.
On the topic of that as well, they've actually added a Deathwing Lieutenant as well, which is quite cool. So they've now added a Terminator character Lieutenant for your Deathwing as well. So the Deathwing Strike Master, who is essentially a Lieutenant in Terminator armor, because up till now there hasn't been a Lieutenant in Terminator armor, but now there is in the form of the Deathwing Strike Master. So that's a massive plus as well.
So is there an actual model for him, or is it like a kit batch?
No, so they've used what is actually bizarrely in the miniature that they've used for the Deathwing Strike Master in the Codex, they've used the Deathwing Captain model from the Deathwing box set, or the Deathwing Captain version of him. But I guess the logic is that Belial is the Captain / Master, and this guy is his his right hand man. The other thing that they get obviously as well is the Interrogator Chaplains, which are also really, really great. Essentially, they're about as fighty as a regular chaplain now. They've got 4 attacks and so on and so forth, but they have an aura of dread. So while an enemy unit is within 6 of this model, it counts as being below half strength, which is pretty cool, Phil. So essentially, if you manage to kill some stuff and they run away, they count as being below half strength, which is pretty massive when it comes to combat attrition tests.
Yeah, that's really good.
Unless they ignore that, right?
But again, Dark Angels v Fallen that is being played as Dark Angels.
Or the Krieg, Phil, the Krieg.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
Though I completely forgot about them. Oh dear.
You've forgotten about them already. Don't say that, Phil. Your fans will leave you.
Oh, I know. Got to maintain the
They'll abandon you.
Krieg.
Oh no. But look, I think we've probably spent long enough talking about Dark Angels now. There's a bunch of other relics and things that are in there, but
wait, can we not talk about the bestest Dark Angel of them all?
What, Azrael?
Do you know which one I'm going to talk about?
Oh, Ezekiel.
No, it's
which
one
one?
that's even better. It's Lazarus, the Primaris guy.
Get out of here! Tell me about him. Go on then. Tell me about Lazarus.
I was joking. We don't really need to talk about him.
No, come on. Let's talk about him because I imagine I haven't actually read his rules because I refuse to acknowledge his existence. But please tell me about him.
Let me try and convince you.
Go on, tell me about him.
Regular sort of stats: weapon skill, ballistic skill of 2+, strength toughness 4, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, free up save. He's armed with a bolt pistol, Enmity's Edge, which is a sword, frag grenades, crack grenades, and you can only have one of him because he's a named character. Bolt pistol is as you would expect. Enmity's Edge is a sword with a +2 strength, -4 AP, 2 damage, and each time you make an attack with a weapon that's allocated to a Psyker model, the attack damage characteristic is 4. So 4 damage against Psykers. Not too shabby. He's got intractable will. If this model is destroyed and it is with engagement range of an enemy unit, do not remove him from play. After the attacking models has finished making his attacks, this guy can be selected to fight even if it has already fought this phase. After you resolve those attacks, it's then removed. It doesn't...
So he can do it even after he's attacked as well?
Does not even play. It can, after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks, be selected to fight, even if it has already fought this phase. Yes. So you can effectively attack twice.
Wow.
In the turn that he dies, and obviously it happens automatically. You can't combo it with stratagems and banners that allow him to fight before he dies.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's got a 4+ invulnerable save due to an Iron Halo. He's got a Rites of Battle aura. Which is friendly Dark Angels core units within 6. Each time they make an attack, they can reroll hit rolls of 1. Pretty standard.
I swear for Dark Angels, they should change that to Rites of Battle Primaris, so only Primaris Dark Angels get to reroll 1s.
Well, you can play him that way.
Well, I wouldn't even play him.
I know. He's also
even. I can already. He's amazing, but he ain't coming near my Dark Angels.
And his inner circle is a lesser inner circle.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the kids' table.
Exactly.
So
he's also got the Spirit Shield Helm. It's an aura ability. While friendly Dark Angel units within 6 of this model, each time a model in that unit would lose a wound as a result of a wound roll a d6. Adding 1 to the result. If this model would lose a wound on a 5+, that wound is not lost. Wait, what?
It's specifically as a result of a mortal wound.
As a result.
Yeah,
so it's a 5+, and if it's a mortal wound, it's a 4+, basically. The wound is not lost. It's shrugged, as they say.
No, it's specifically mortal wounds, though. So while friendly Dark Angel units are within 6 of this model, each time a model in that unit would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll a d6, adding 1 to the result. If this model that would lose a wound on 5+,
that wording doesn't actually make sense.
Oh no! So the wording is so if it's him that's getting it, it's 4s. Anything else, it's 5+.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. If this model, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he's getting 4+ shrugs against mortal wounds. And anyone else is getting 5.
Is getting 5. A 5+, feel no pain within 6. That's pretty good.
Should only work on Primaris Marines. And get rid of, honestly, he's fine, isn't he? I mean, I'm glad that they stopped it, because I seem to remember him being better in his old version. There are clear hints that at one point this was going to be Azrael in Primaris form, but they wised up and realized that would be stupid. But
it is a bit odd that they did that, because every other army sort of had a Primarisified character from old. And with this one, they've gone, let's give you a brand new character. So yeah, maybe someone said, oh, actually, it would be, I don't know, because then they'll
do it eventually.
I mean, yeah, I get it, but in a way, it would actually, for maybe people like you who hate Primaris,
I don't hate Primaris.
No, but maybe it would make you buy into the Dark Angels concept if one of their own had become Primaris by crossing the Rubicon. Maybe it would be more palatable for you to explain why there is Primaris Inner Circle members.
See, here's the thing, right? Is if they turned around to me and said, Ezekiel's now Primaris, Asmodai is now Primaris.
You're going to burn your toys.
I'm not going to burn them. I'm just going to be cool, I'll just use the Legends variant. As far as I'm concerned, that at that point, it's like, to me, when it comes to Dark Angels, so much of the flavor of that army is dependent upon their weird, insane levels of secrecy and of suspicion and fear and anger towards all this stuff. And I just think the minute Azrael becomes Primaris, he's not Azrael anymore, as far as I'm concerned. He's some new thing that is.
It's very judgmental of you.
Hey, look, man, it's just how I view the Dark Angel army. I just don't get it.
I think
look, I'm fine with Marnius Calgar being Primaris. I'm fine with Khan and Tigerius and every other character that made Primaris.
Messing with my toys, it's not on.
Mate, I own those things, right? Like, I'm not saying it's nothing. Look, it's funny because you're trying to turn this into a weird, because here's the thing, right? Azrael, if he got a Primaris model, would be a much cooler model than what he is currently, right? I totally get that. But I just think from a narrative perspective, from a storyline perspective, I'd like them to actually turn around and go, here's a new Azrael model. And you know what's cool about him? He's not Primaris. But then at least it sparks something interesting. It turns into, you give me a new Azrael model and he's not Primaris. Yes, this is cool. This is what I'm interested in.
10th edition, here we come.
Mate, I'm telling you, man, that's much cooler. Like, come on, it's much better. But I get it, right? Because at the end of the day, this is the problem. This is the problem where the business meets the fluff and the narrative. Games Workshop have made it abundantly clear to us that in 5 years' time, normal Firstborn Space Marines will either not exist anymore as a buyable range, or what they will probably do is they will re-release them as a Firstborn range to get us to buy Space Marines yet again.
Yeah, sort of true scale Mark 9 is this armor that
it's coming, right?
I mean, I don't know. I think they will probably see the lie of the land in terms of what's popular and what's not. And if there is a sort of nostalgia demand for things like Terminators and regular old school Marines with the weird vent mouths, then they'll probably bring them back like they have done with the hero range, is that kind of correctly scaled old style Marines, and they actually do look really good. Really but good. Regular kind of dinky Marines look rubbish in comparison to Primaris.
100% agree with you. 100% agree. Let's just talk about Azrael quickly because he's cool.
Go on.
Azrael is movement 6, weapon skill ballistic skill 2. He's got strength and toughness of 4, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, a leadership of 9, and a 2+ save. Azrael is equipped with a bolt pistol, Lion's Wrath, Sword of Secrets, frag and crack grenades. Your army can only include one Azrael model. The Lion's Wrath is a combi weapon, and it consists of a mastercrafted bolt gun and a mastercrafted plasma gun. Both these weapons are range 24. Both are rapid fire 1. The mastercrafted bolt gun is strength 4 -1 2 damage, and the mastercrafted plasma gun is strength 8 -4 2 damage. Noting that there is no profile for the mastercrafted plasma gun to overcharge. It is always 2 damage, but you cannot overcharge it.
No, well, at least it stops him from killing himself,
which I have done with Azrael on a few occasions. Sword of Secrets.
Baited you.
I know. It's always like, because you go, he re-rolls all his hits. You're not going to roll a 1 twice. Always. Sword of Secrets is a melee weapon with strength +2, -4, 2 damage. Each time this attack is made with this weapon, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to normal damage. He's an Angels of Death. He's got an Iron Halo, so he's got a 4+ invulnerable save. He's a Chapter Master. He has a Watcher in the Dark, so he can attempt to deny the Witch. He is a Supreme Tactician, so he gives you 2 command points if he's your Warlord. Noticing, I believe that's 1 more command point than Dante gives you for being the Warden of the Sigmatum, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I think he only gives you 1 command point for that.
Oh, right. Well, he's much
Whereas this
as well.
Well, exactly. But there you go. What did you say? You say he's much cooler?
No, it's smaller. He's a
yes,
tiny little model.
Yeah, well, Azrael's pretty small now, but he's got a big banner that makes up for it,
Exactly.
He's got the Rights of Battle, so he's giving reroll 1s, and he's got the Lion Helm, which is while friendly Dark Angel Infantry or Dark Angel Barker units within 6 of this model Models in that unit have a 4+ invulnerable save against ranged attacks. So actually, that was pretty good.
Imagine that comboed with Lazarus, the power couple.
I don't think Azrael
4 up
would waste
invulnerable
his time with
save.
Lazarus.
5 up. 4 up invulnerable save, 5 up shrug. Pretty good.
Against mortal wounds.
Oh, yeah, it's only mortal wounds, isn't it? Oh, it's rubbish.
Only mortal wounds, mate.
Yeah,
He's rubbish, mate. Get him out of there.
Exactly.
Don't waste your time with him. Anyway, there you go. So that's us talking about Dark Angels. Sorry for all the ranting about why I think Primaris don't belong in Dark Angels, but that is my truth, and I wear it like armor.
If people really want to know how you feel, they need to go back and find the episode where the Lazarus model was previewed, and it is like a hour-long rant.
I just don't get it, Phil. I don't get it. Don't kick me off again. I just don't get it. I don't understand why. If there was any army to do it with, right? It's so much wasted potential. That's what hurts me more than anything. Do you not feel that?
Well, what would be interesting is I don't know how much it's explored in the lore, because I think Black Library tends to have these sort of nuanced sort of politics going on in the background a lot better. So if there were some stories fleshing out how Dark Angels and Primaris interact, I'm sure there is. So they must have resolved it for most people, but I get that if you're not going to buy into that, that's fair enough.
It's not that I don't buy into it, because there was a book, or rather a short story, early doors, called Secret Wars that explored it. And essentially what the Dark Angels were doing is they reluctantly allowed Primaris into their ranks, but they would mind wipe them constantly. So they were always they didn't let them know about the secrets. They didn't let them into the inner circle, and they just mind wiped them all the time. And there's this sequence within that book where a Primaris is going through a mind wiping process, and he essentially says to the interrogator chaplain or the apothecary that's performing this mind wipe that he knows what they're doing and why they're doing it. It's if you don't, it's basically, he says to the master or whoever's doing it, is if you don't think we know what's going on, you're mistaken. We know about the Fallen, we know about all this stuff, which again, by the way, is so dumb, because there are normal Space Marines within the ranks of the Dark Angels who haven't got a clue about that. But again, they had to make out that because Primaris are bigger and smarter and whatever they are, that they could figure it out. I was I hate you. Why have you done this? No, I don't hate them. That's too strong a word, but I just, why?
Or maybe the Primaris in the inner circle also get mind wiped. They just don't know it.
I just don't think they belong in the inner circle, Phil. Just keep them out of it.
Get out.
Keep them out. It's not, it's stupid. It's so stupid. Literally everything about the fluff up to this point has been that it's super secretive. Like I said about Tech Marines, right? Tech Marines literally could have been fighting alongside, Battle Brothers within the ranks of the Dark Angels for hundreds of years, and they get selected to go and become a Tech Marine. And they know that the minute they do that, they're doing it for the best benefit of the chapter, but they know the minute they do that, they're going to come back and be completely ostracized because no one trusts them, right? How can you have that in the fluff and just go, but Primaris are fine? It's
well, because why wouldn't they be? They are still Dark Angels at the end of the day. They're still going through the same process.
Well, the greater majority of them aren't, though, are they? The majority of them are these things that were bred on Mars and supplied by Gilliman. Gilliman just turned away to have some Primaris Marines. And essentially, I suppose the narrative situation, the way that GW likes to sort of portray the story at the moment is the Dark Angels felt like they had to accept them because they didn't want Gilliman to get wind of the secrets. So they decided to take them under duress in order to essentially make it look like they were complying. But the way they were supposedly dealing with that is they mind wiped and kept them away from the secrets.
Yeah.
But then the implication is but essentially what Games Workshop have done is they've tried to placate lunatics like me who take it way too seriously early doors. And then with this latest edition, they've gone, that was a few years ago when we introduced that idea.
Yeah.
We're just
they're all good
bulldozering that away now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
And at the end of the day, it's all just make believe little models, right? So whatever, it doesn't matter. But you got to have your principles, Phil. Got to have your principles.
Well, despite Primaris being in the inner circle, what's your hot take on Dark Angels?
Hot take on Dark Angels is love it. I think they have done an excellent job of defining and delivering a codex that enables me as a Dark Angels player to express the way that I want to play Dark Angels. And I think they have achieved that for every flavor of Dark Angel player. And I think that is the same of every codex that they've done up to this point. I think the flexibility, the customization available in the book is extraordinarily good. And I'm really, really impressed with it. I love it. I think it's a great book. I think it's strong without feeling too strong. Again, I think it's easily the best of the four Space Marine supplements that have come into existence. I think, between Space Wolves, Blood Angels, and Death Watch, these guys have obviously strong builds. I would say to anyone out there who's thinking about exploiting some of the obvious benefits of some of the Deathwing options, I'd be prepared for them to probably receive some nerfs in the future. I don't know what those nerfs would be, but I imagine some price hikes might be coming their way. But other than that, right? I mean, it's great. I love it. I think it's phenomenal, and it's just breathed new life into an army that has always been interesting, but hasn't really felt fully formed in a while. So, yeah, I love it. It's definitely my favorite book of the four that they've done for the latest series of supplements. Still love my Death Watch. Death Watch are a new project for me, and I'm still loving them. But I already own all this Dark Angel stuff, so it's very easy for me just to start to bring that out again. And they've given me the desire to do so. So, yeah, well done them. It's great, in my opinion.
Do you think
10 out of 10?
Do you think, though, if you're not that into Deathwing or Ravenwing and you just like sort of standard Dark Angels, it's good, or is it kind of a bit lacking?
If you're not into Deathwing or Ravenwing, there are better options, right? But Deathwing and Ravenwing are the army, so that's what you're going to take. I
mean, that's probably why most people have got them, unless you're just like into Plasma. And that was...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're taking massive units of Hellblasters or Plasma in Cursors, not in Cursors, sorry, Inceptors, then fine. But like, honestly, Green Wing Dark Angels have obviously for the real purists, for the the more fluff related players. But even then, I think for the more fluff related players, you're still looking at that second company synergy, because it's really,
even if it's, I guess, just a couple of units, like you don't need to take all of them. Like you don't need half an army made of Deathwing.
No, not at all. And I think that's the thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of really cool options that you can do with just the standard, suite of Marine options. You can go, okay, cool, here's my 3 tactical squads and some rhinos, and here's Azrael, and here's some veterans with Azrael. And there's some gorgeous models, obviously, from the Heresy range now that you can use for like veterans and things for Dark Angels that just look absolutely stunning.
Oh yeah.
So you could do some amazing work with them, and then you can incorporate that into your list, and then you could add in some Deathwing and some Ravenwing. I think a mixture of all three is always going to be the most interesting. But for me personally, at the moment, I'm just going Deathwing, Ravenwing, because I feel like that's more of their kind of style. It's more a case of the Ravenwings show up and they fly into the area and they scout out the location. My kind of narrative direction for all of this is the Ravenwing have arrived on the scene, and the narrative would be that several hours prior to the battle beginning, the Ravenwing were chasing down the enemy, and then they finally cornered them. And upon that moment, then the Deathwing are being called in to spring that final trap and to put the plan in motion and to try and seek out the information that they're searching for, or to capture one of the enemy commanders to interrogate them and learn about what they know about the Fallen and all that good stuff. So I love all that kind of narrative. I just like the idea of an army that essentially is like a really mad like strike force, like it's just kind of bam, here we are, and we're going to have you, and then we're going to drag you away kicking and screaming, and make what remains of your life pretty miserable until you tell us what we want to know. Yeah, Dark Angels. How about you, Phil? What do you reckon? Would you be tempted to add some of this flavor to your collection?
Not really. I think they're a good option if I want to maybe sort of take my minor tools and run them as a different variant of Successor chapter, because at the moment I'm very much leaning towards White Scars, which is what I've been using. I think if I was going to do more close combat-y stuff, I'd actually probably look more towards Blood Angels, but I think there's strong options here as well. Like historically, Mind Tools are like famed for having lots of Tartarus pattern Terminators, so you could quite easily do a version that's sort of a first company heavy and go, I'm just going to take these as Dark Angel successors instead, just because some of the abilities are like crazy good. Or as I said, if you just wanted lots of Blade Guard, you could do some cool versions with these guys as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth a look at and being aware of what they can do.
Totally.
I think they look really strong. Like they seem like everyone seems to think they're like the strongest of the Space Marine options at the moment. And I don't know if that's just because the current meta is like really small elite units that are really durable, and this, like the Deathwing side of it, just fits in perfectly into that, because that's exactly what they are. And I don't know if the meta's ever going to shift away from that. I mean, if it does, then I don't know how it would, unless the missions themselves fundamentally change. But
yeah,
if that
which
does
they
happen,
probably will,
then maybe these won't be super great in like a year's time, but currently they seem really good. So great.
Yeah, they suit the current mission structure, certainly. And they have all the right keywords and all the right things that you want them to have. Their infantry, and they're durable, and that's the thing. But they are expensive, right? I mean, you're taking a 10-man unit of Deathwing, you're looking at 400 points. I mean, that's a lot to take.
But great if you don't like painting.
Oh yeah, 35 models, you're done. So yeah, no, and they are gorgeous miniatures. I mean, there's something inherently amazing about an army of Terminators. It's just like, oh, that's pretty cool. But again, for me, you got to mix them. You got to have some Raven Wing in there, and then you're not optimizing the army really. But again, for me, Dark Angels now aren't really about, as has become apparent with my grumbling about Primaris, I'm not interested in playing Dark Angels competitively. I like the idea of Dark Angels just being like a specific thing to me now. Like, I'm not interested in, like, I've got Deathwatch and I've got Craft Worlds and I've got, other forms of Space Marines or Imperial Knights or any other number of things that I can do if I'm looking to be competitive. Even if Dark Angels are obviously really good competitively, it's not an army that I'm crying out to make into a competitive force at this stage. But maybe at some point I might reevaluate that statement, because they might just be that good. But at the moment, I'm more excited about them as a narrative thing than a competitive thing.
But not so narrative you want to do Crusade with them.
I could do. I mean, again, it's one of those things that, of all the things, I'd be more tempted to try out Crusade games with Dark Angels than a lot of other things, because they're one of the few. They are probably the only Space Marine army where I'm truly invested in their narrative. As you can tell, like, I don't care if Marnius Calgar becomes Primaris. I don't care if Dante becomes. I wouldn't even mind if Gabriel Seth became Primaris, even though he famously has said at the start of 8th edition, as things started, he walked away from Dante going, "These aren't flesh terrors. They're just things in wearing the same colors." Like, Gabriel Seth essentially, as soon as they introduced Primaris Marines into the Flesh Terrors, Gabriel Seth was just like, nah, not for me, and just went off and started marauding around the universe with the last remaining actual Flesh Terrors, basically just going on a crusade to get killed. Even if you made him a Primaris, I'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. But Dark Angels, I care. Yeah, and I don't know why, but I just do.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's like your Krieg stuff, right? Sometimes it's difficult to explain it, but it makes sense to you.
Exactly. The frothing rage is real.
Exactly, right? If I told you, come on, Phil, you can take Ogrins now in your Krieg, are you going to do it?
Oh,
exactly.
The only way I would is I would actually theme them up slightly differently and take them as like a unit with my Inquisition. So it's like they're part of her army, not my Krieg. And
so in the same way, I wouldn't. If I was really, really adamant that I needed to put some sort of Primaris thing in it, I might take it as like a successor chapter that has been called on by the Dark Angels for some purpose. Like, I don't mind like the idea that Dark Angels would use Primaris as battering rams or as just, sacrificial units. Like, I don't mind that. But the idea, it's just the inner circle thing just doesn't work for me at all.
Fair enough. I mean, you don't have to take them.
No, I won't, and I don't mind anyone who does. It's not like you could antagonize me if I turned up to a game and you went, "Oh, look, who's all my inner circle Primaris stuff." I'd be like, "Good for you." Everyone's hobby's their own, right? Like at the end of the day, you do what you want with it, and if there's a reason for you to take loads of Blade Guard with inner circle abilities, good on you. It's obvious to see what's good about that. I just don't like it from a flavor or a fluff perspective because I'm weird.
And on that note, let's go to
Indeed.
Whatever's next.
Whatever's next. Transitional noise. Woo! And that's it, everyone. The end of the show, although not really, because obviously we're now going to talk about other things that have been occupying our hobby brains during the span of time since last we did this. I wanted to talk about the Las Vegas Nopen because we never really got around to talking about that. But then I don't know if that's really something that we need to get into extensively. I mean, what did you think of the Las Vegas Nopen, Phil? Did you even watch it?
I watched a couple of games, and I think on most of them I got about maybe halfway or 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, "Cool, I've had enough of watching that," and then I switched it off, or I skipped to the end to see the result. Yeah, I mean, they seemed okay. They seemed quite long. Everyone I've seen seemed to have technical issues of some kind with audio, and that was across multiple streaming channels. I watched. I guess that's just the way it is. The concept was, I mean, it was for charity. It was to replace the LVO Open. So it was all for a good cause. I think that was, a good thing. I think the concept of the armies, how they change over. So for those of you that are listening under a rock, maybe that haven't heard of it, it's a bunch of different YouTube channels to do with 40k are playing games sort of against themselves first of all, and then the list progresses. So the army progresses to the next round, not the player. Although for the most part, the player of the first army got to play it in the second game because basically they do 2 games against their mate who they run the channel with, and then eventually the list gets handed off to a completely different channel playing the army, which is interesting because you've got to make sure that your army's playable in terms of everyone's got that army in their collection if they end up having to play.
But I think as an event and as what it represents, I think it was really great. I thought some of the channels involved in it did a fantastic job. Credit where credit's due to Joe and Steve over at Vanguard. I thought their actual production was really great. I think the guys at Hellstorm did an excellent job. Tabletop Titans were amazing. And obviously the guys who ran the finals, the Art of War guys, put on a good show as well. I think, again, the guys are really upping their game. The production is fantastic. The work that is happening in that space is becoming really, really impressive. So I think credit where credit's due to all those guys coming together and making that happen. I think it was, it was a great piece of entertainment. Genuinely, I mean, fair play to these guys. It was a good show. I don't know if I missed anyone who was involved in it. Those are the only ones that I was aware of. Was there any others? Did the guys over at No Retreat do it?
No, I don't think so.
No, so SN were doing it. Winters wasn't doing one, was he?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
odd that you didn't get Winters. Like, Winters would have been a big win for that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess he's not probably set up to do live streaming.
He isn't, no.
That was the reason why Tabletop Tactics couldn't get involved, because they had been asked, but they basically don't have the sort of space to do 3 people, which is what I need for streaming.
Yeah, of course.
for their place to be COVID secure. So all of their battle reports are just 2 people. One of them's holding the camera. So
Gotcha.
I think maybe if they had more time, they could have done it, but I think it was quite short notice.
Oh, all these things usually are, right? You know, scramble. We got a great idea. Let's get it done. But there you go.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. So Las Vegas Open was pretty good. I don't know if there were any other topics that were floating around the ether lately. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to them if it is the case. But let's see what the people said about the dangles.
So JP underscore WH40K, he says, I know this is very all exciting, and I'm sure some people are really interested, but can we just talk about God again?
Toke said the same thing in a comment the other day. He was like, might I suggest more Krieg? And I was like, mate, what am I going to start to say about Krieg again? It's like, it's when the time is right, more Krieg will come. But on the topic of God, I mean, what do you want to talk about on God front? I mean,
there's not a lot to say. I think they're in that sort of position where, not to say they're stagnant. Well, they're stagnant. Like the Codex is sort of a bit dry at the moment, and in terms of power level, like super far behind. I think a lot of people have been talking about. I think I said in the last episode, like sisters with guard as a good combo, or guard and even custodes, like having and like. Going back to that kind of old style allied system probably is the best way to run them competitively. I think that's probably the best way of doing it.
For me, with Guard, I think Guard is an army that if you really wanted to get experimental with, I think you could look at you can look at maybe like 3 or 4 archetypes for Guard going forwards, right? You can have the tank Guard, you can have the infantry kind of aggressive guard, so your Catachans and your kind of fighty guard. You can have your elite guard, which is the Scions. But the archetype that I think they need to explore and I think would massively enhance the guard is the fortified guard. The idea of guard that are actually utilizing fortifications in big ways. I think that's something that could really become interesting for guard. So the idea that they would introduce very specific terrain for them, so trenches and bunkers and all these things that enable them to, you know, to essentially be in a rooted, you know, tactical position. So much more kind of synonymous with obviously the sort of more, you know, World War I-esque trench warfare, something where they're in fortified positions. Because a lot of the artwork of the Guard is them standing defensively in front of, you know, some kind of compound or some sort of fortification. And, you know, Dawn of War did a great job of illustrating the way the Guard work with terrain and buildings. So the idea in Dawn of War is you would basically be able to move your Guard around a network of buildings and things. So you could basically move them from location to location and have them firing out of the windows and stuff. And that was always sort of really interesting. So that's something I'd like to see them explore with Guard. Because I think, you know, tanks is pretty obvious. The Scion stuff is pretty self-explanatory. The middle ground kind of all-rounder list with like infantry and other stuff is what it is. And obviously you end up with the abhuman stuff and all that other stuff that comes around. But fortified guard is something that I think could be really interesting for him. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Phil.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think with Dark Angels Codex, like the way they've themed it is like it would be great to see that applied to guard. So they've sort of hinted at like a tank only army with the tank cases, but it's like, okay, now take that to the next level. What would happen if it's like you just give benefits to having a detachment of, well, they've sort of done it with the old Spearhead. You can have your tanks as OBSEC, but it's like, that's not super great. But if every tank was OBSEC and counted as 5 models, that'd be super awesome. So yeah, I'd like to see him go down that path of infantry theme, tank theme, and like I said, yeah, sort of fortifications is really interesting, like some kind of bunkers, and the fact that every faction seems to be getting like a unique building or something. That would be really cool to see what they do with guard. So yeah, all of that sort of stuff seems really viable and interesting. I think one thing that I was reading about, well, I've been reading the core book, like the actual big fat, not Codex, the big rule book basically. And I've been going through and reading all the faction stuff at the very beginning, and just reading about the Guard, which is the section I got onto last night, was really interesting because they're just talking about it's like all mass infantry, loads, hundreds of thousands of troops fighting. It's like you don't really get that sense of scale because the Guard, one, because a lot of people take tanks, but also for the troops, like they're not that cheap. Like they're good, so therefore they're not super cheap. They're not in abundance, and if you're running like a mass army, you're not necessarily having hundreds on the board. I know some people do like that, but it's actually quite difficult to have that many on the board and also have like a decent amount of like other stuff unless you're just doing that. So I'd like to see sort of lots of infantry, or there to be lots more bonuses for the infantry.
What could be a really interesting mechanic for them as well, though, is something that they could potentially explore, is adding in a rank system for them. So, and by that I mean more kind of like blocks of infantry as opposed to skirmish infantry. So the idea of maybe using like the apocalypse trays to be able to essentially put a unit into a formation, and then in those formations they gain benefits. But maybe it's something like you can take a 10-man unit of Guard and you can take them as a regular infantry squad, or for you can reduce the points cost of the unit to say 40 points. So say if it's 50 points for 10 guys normally, for 40 points you can turn it into one 10 wound model that essentially becomes one footprint, but it has a bunch of other intrinsic benefits that come along with it becoming one unit. So maybe it's now obviously got superior morale because but then it has a diminishing profile as it gets declined. But the idea is that it kind of creates something interesting, because all of a sudden you're basically gone, we've mushed them into one thing, and then all of a sudden it starts to portray some of the interesting elements of the Guard, which is that it's not about the individuals, it's about the army, as it were. And I think something like that could be super interesting if you could block them up and turn them into rank and file things.
Yeah, I think the Mordian Iron Guard have that their regimental trait does something similar already, because it's like if you're within an inch of like two other models, or there's some kind of if you're in two lines, or you're all touching each other because you're in close proximity, then you get some bonuses. But yeah, I think I was thinking recently that the command squad would be the one that would benefit the most from being a single unit, like Triumph of St. Catherine. Doesn't necessarily have to be on a dynamic base, but I wouldn't be surprised if they redid them. They would then have them on a kind of little diorama base. But give that squad and the commander that is weirdly got separated from 8th edition in as a separate unit. Like just make them one squad, make them almost, as you said, make them one model with a bunch of rules. Because the weird thing you get at the moment is you have a bunch of special weapons, and they're just in like a 4-man squad, and they just get blown off the table. Because they've kind of got nothing protecting them or to keep them alive. Whereas the officer is a character, so therefore he's protected. So yeah, if they could do something where, like I said, is that they degrade, but they're maybe cast as one model, that would be much more interesting. Yeah, I don't know whether they'd ever do that with the actual infantry squads, just because...
Well, again, though, if they just... Much like what they did with GSC, right? They went, here you go, here's blip counters. If they just go, oh, here's a tray, and then you can just plop all your models into it, and then they become essentially like a diorama piece as well. Now, I think for a lot of Guard players, they'd love that as well, because they could be like, oh, I can express more of a kind of diorama mechanic with this footprint that you give me, similar to Mantic Games Kings of War. Kings of War has a very similar mechanic where units aren't individual models, they're just footprints, and you can build those up as you want to, and essentially as they take damage they reduce in efficiency, so they dial down through different states of usefulness, as it were. So I don't know, something like that I think for Guard would be super cool, and something that we haven't seen before in 40k, and something that could add a lot of flavor to them. But again, this is me just spitballing with you. You asked me to talk about Guard, that's what I came up with. There you go.
Well, that's cool. We've got a couple more questions as well. So We have one from Cantor Blue. You notice a
Of
general
course we do.
theme of regular contributors.
Indeed.
What do you think this book means for the other Chaos Space Marine factions? Cry emoji, cry laugh emoji. If you had to choose, would you go full Deathwing or full Ravenwing from both a competitive and aesthetic standpoint?
Well, I mean, I feel like we've addressed the perspective when it comes to, the Deathwing Ravenwing synergies and what I think is best. I think a lot of people will tell you that Deathwing in isolation are the way to go. But I personally feel like the Deathwing Ravenwing combo is the most thematic and interesting thing that you can do, and certainly what I would be most interested in pursuing. And then beyond that, in terms of obviously what it means for the other Chaos Space Marine factions out there, I think, it doesn't mean an awful lot, I guess. I mean, I don't know really how to interpret that, because although I do find it funny that we suggest that these guys are Chaos Space Marines, obviously it's not going to mean anything for them. But I would love to see Fallen become a Heretic Astartes chapter type. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love Fallen just to be a type of Chaos Space Marine.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would be, like you said, just fleshing them out, not necessarily a whole sub-faction, but just as a chapter/legion trait, I guess.
Yeah, and just give them some extra characters or something, or just let you just do what you want to do with them, right? I mean, I just think Fallen need more love to then bring that whole aspect of the narrative to life.
Sure. And then what do you think looks-wise is better, Ravenwing or Deathwing?
Ravenwing.
I'm sort of torn, but I do think Ravenwing with all the jet bikes and like Dark Talon and all their unique specific speeders, I think would be probably a bit.
Yeah. Deathwing, for nostalgia's sake, are definitely cool. But when you actually see a Ravenwing army, a proper Ravenwing army, it is phenomenal. I remember we were at Warhammer World, years ago, and a guy was running a Ravenwing army, and it wasn't competitive at the time. It wasn't great, but everyone was like, wow, look at that. That is amazing. And I completely agree. Ravenwing, they're just cool, man. Like, just a whole army of bikes covered in mad regalia, and it's just, well, not regalia, but but all the mad, icons and stuff. I love it. It's cool. Ravenwing are cool. Deathwing are cool. They're both cool, but yeah. My gut said Ravenwing, so I'm sticking with my gut. Ravenwing.
Cool. Fair enough.
How about for you, Phil?
Yeah, like I said, I think Ravenwing, if you're going full on, like crazy jet bikes and stuff, then probably that. Although, like you said, I think quintessential classic Terminators is pretty iconic. I mean, I don't know. The range of both is quite dated, though. Terminators visually look a bit out of proportion, whereas with the vehicles, especially with the speeds, you can get away with it a lot more. But yeah, some of their weird, the Nephilim jet fighter, like that, I just think is super cool. Like, it's really unique.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's really wicked. Oh, I love it. What's next, Phil? What else you got for us?
Cool. We've got 2-bit paints. Do you think it's worth investing in a Deathwing or Ravenwing army if you're a new player? Seems the old models and units are where the competitive edge is, but is it worth giving Primaris versions of chapter units because they are eventually going to come out?
So, as I've made clear during the segment, if you're going to do Deathwing and Ravenwing, do it properly. Use the established miniatures. I'm slightly less worried about Ravenwing being Primaris than I am about Deathwing, only because Ravenwing technically aren't members of the Inner Circle, but they're on their way there, and even that feels like a bridge too far, but it's technically less bad than doing it with Deathwing. But I see your point, and I take it on board. I think, ultimately, here's what I would always say to anyone when it comes to trying to be competitive or play competitive lists or even trying to build something. Deathwing will be a relatively easy army for you to build and paint and use competitively now, but it will not be the best thing in the game for more than 6 months, because this meta just moves too quickly. And if you're buying it purely to be the bestest, don't bother, because especially if you're a new player, pursuit of perfection or best army is just not even necessarily worth it at the moment. Like, I think the way the game is at the moment is just buy and collect the stuff you like, focus on that, and then obviously when you've built up enough gameplay experience, when you're knowledgeable, when you've got a feel for how you like to play and what you like to do, then make decisions. Because the truth is a Deathwing army in isolation, if it doesn't suit your play style, you will find it very boring and you might get unengaged with the hobby because you've built such a one-dimensional list that only does one thing. So mix it up is always what I would say. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Phil, but I imagine you echo my sentiment.
Yeah, like I always think you should never chase the meta because the meta's going to shift. And as the original point was, it's like they seem like they've got really good rules at the moment, but 5 years time when another codex comes out, or not even 3 years time, say when another codex is going to come out, they might not be the bee's knees when it comes to Dark Angels. So if you love Dark Angels, by all means collect a Dark Angels army and have Deathwing or have Ravenwing as part of it, because then you can expand into the different avenues. If you really like Deathwing, do lots of Deathwing, but ultimately at the end of the day, once there's a rules update and you go, actually they're not very competitive and I want to do competitive and do competitive events, you've got more of that Dark Angels army to actually pull upon. So you take what is currently good. So you might go, suddenly Ravenwing's really good, I'm just going to take that. Or Greenwing, going to suddenly lean more into that. Models wise, as I said, I think Deathwing and Ravenwing have dated stuff. I mean, it would be interesting it's a bit, you can't really do a Deathwing Primaris in terms of, you can't really Primarisify Terminators because Terminators don't have a Primaris equivalent. And you can't really do true scale versions of Terminators unless you use the Heroes range, I guess. Or you really painstakingly convert models up to make their legs bigger. So I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go about it that way. I mean, you could just go, I'll just take Blade Guard because they're all the future-proofed versions, but then you'll incur the wrath of Dan.
You won't. Do whatever you want, right? Like, I don't care. Like, honestly, I don't care. Like, please don't misconstrue my frustration. Again, it's an entirely personal decision. Do what you want to do. It's your hobby. At the end of the day, I am only negatively impacting myself by those decisions. That's all there is to it. Cool, man.
We've got one last one from Old Folkstorm. He says, exactly. He says, I feel like Death Guard and Dark Angels, 2 Chaos Codexes in a row. Ooh. Spread the love a little at Warhammer Official. Obviously, it's that old Chaos joke again. He then does say, honestly, I'm excited. Every Horus Heresy book about the First Legion has been talked down, and every time I enjoy it immensely. So I hope good things are coming for the Sons of Caliban. He's also looking forward to hearing your hot takes on interesting builds.
Interesting builds.
That maybe doesn't include spamming Terminators or bikes. What would you come?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the interesting builds, as far as I'm concerned, is the mixture of Ravenwing and Deathwing. I think too much of one is a bad decision. I think if you were gonna go heavy on one, I'd probably actually argue you want to go heavier on Ravenwing than you want to go heavier on Deathwing, which might be controversial to some, but that's how I kind of feel about it. But irrespective, Ravenwing's biggest problem is that Ravenwing can't deal with ruins, and unfortunately in more competitive games, ruins are everywhere. So you need the infantry keyword to interact with those efficiently, and if you can't do that, then you can't win. So there's your biggest problem with the Ravenwing. So in terms of builds, I think, it really depends on what you want to do with the lists and what you want to build out of them, and what it is that you think, what suits your playstyle. For me, my 2,000 point army list for Dark Angels at the moment is Belial, an Interrogator Chaplain, although I might change that out for a Librarian before long, because I think those Librarian powers are pretty incredible. But it's still, at the moment, Interrogator Chaplain, Belial, a 10-man unit of regular Terminators that become Deathwing because of Deathwing stuff, 1 5-man unit of Deathwing Knights, 1 Contemptor Dreadnought, because I just own it and I thought it was cool to have it in the list, so 1 Contemptor Dreadnought, and 1 Deathwing Apothecary. And then I have a Ravenwing detachment, which is a Talon Master, a unit of 3 Black Knights, 5 Ravenwing Bikes, a Dark Shroud, and 3 Land Speeders with multi-melters. And that's my army for 2,000 points, pretty much on the nose, unless I'm forgetting something. But that's a 2,000 point list, and it's a nice mixture of everything. And I like regular Land Speeders. If you want my hot take on something, regular Land Speeders are pretty amazing. The 60 points base, 70 points if you put a multi-melter on them, which I would recommend. You've got the spotting stratagem that we spoke about, where you can basically get hitting on +1 to hit against 1 unit that you mark with them. That includes themselves, so you could have a 3-man unit with multi-melters, and then you could be hitting on 2s with those multi-melters. So that's 6 multi-melters hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s or 4s, depending on the toughness of what you're shooting against. And then obviously doing a truckload of damage out of that. And then you combo in all the other stuff that's going to, unload on them as well. So yeah, there's some really good options in that list and some really interesting stuff. And again, that I don't look at and think, oh, that's a really amazing, like super powerful competitive list. I look at it and just go, that'll be a fun all-comers list. I'll probably lose as many as I win, but it's not intended to be anything other than a fun army. So yeah, that's my hot take on a list, but it's not super competitive. What every competitive person will tell you is take 10 Deathwing Knights, and then take 20 Deathwing, and then take an Ancient, and an Apothecary, and a Master, and a Librarian, and there you go. There's 30 odd models that will win because they might, but it just seems really boring. Is my take on it. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I was going to point out, I remember back in the day when we were reviewing the top 13 chapters of Space Marines, you were like, Dark Angels, they're like number 1. And it's like,
I stand by that statement.
Now you are correct. But at the time, everyone laughed at you. But I mean, I think now...
Well, you see, I saw through the mists of time. I knew that what was coming for them. I didn't know this was it, but based off their index, man, it was obvious that these guys were going to be a top army in this edition.
Yeah, no, I
based off that index.
I think Deathwing's cool, Ravenwing's cool. I think even regular, was it Greenwing would look cool on the tabletop, and just your theme is they're Space Marines with lots of plasma guns. Like that looks awesome, and they're still Space Marines, so they're still good.
They're amazing.
And I would probably still throw in a couple of, as you said, Deathwing, Ravenwing, just for cool sake.
That's a great army.
Lazarus.
Yeah, if you want Lazarus in there, go for it.
Because I'm a bit more. I'm more about the Primaris if I'm doing a Space Marine army. Because
of course, I get that.
The models of the old Marines really hold them back, unless of course you do, as people have said, you do like Primaris conversions of them, so they've got the new scale models, but the old rules, which I think is viable for most parts, with the exception of things like Terminators.
If you're running the whole army as Primaris models repping for old stuff, I'm fine with that. If you just do head swaps and things, like, as long as everything in the army is firstborn. The problem is when you start introducing the idea that squad's a Primaris squad and that squad isn't. It's like,
it's got to be pretty clear cut, which is what I would try and avoid. I mean, for some things it's fine. So, for example, how do you feel about like Primaris? Was it Vanguard vets? Because they're a very unique looking squad that you wouldn't mix up with regular intercessors.
So I've said it before, in casual play, go for it. Tournament play, hate it. I don't agree with it in tournament play. I think at the end of the day, there is a model that represents that, and ultimately you should not be using a Primaris model to represent a Firstborn Marine if you're doing it competitively. But if you're not doing it competitively, go crazy. But for me personally, out of respect to my opponent, I would never turn up to a game with a unit converted from Primaris stuff for competitive play. I just wouldn't do it because I don't agree with the rule of cool in that instance. Because I just think, because just pick a lane when it comes to this stuff, and it annoys me because a lot of people in the community will be like, "Well, I suppose that's all right." Well, it's like, well, yeah, but then you're slamming people for other stuff. It's like either it's one or the other, right? And as far as I'm concerned, if you turn up and you go, "Here's my unit of Death Company models," they're Death Company intercessors, but I've put jump packs on them, so now they're just regular Death Company. It's like, well, there is Death Company intercessors, they just don't have jump packs. But you've put jump packs on, and now you're expecting me to understand that that's something different. It's like, I just don't like it. And the argument of, oh, it's unique war gear and it's this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, that makes sense if you know, but if you don't, then it's not fair, because there are advantages to being able to pretend that a unit's Primaris. You could just turn around and go, oh, Transhuman, which is a Primaris only ability. I'm going to do that on this unit of Vanguard.
I'll put my Smash Captain away when I'm at a tournament around you then, that I've converted.
Well, look, mate, all I'm saying is, well, that Smash Captain is doubly ridiculous because it's Gravis armor. No. So I'm like, what is it?
Well, that's the thing. Well, because originally it was more to fit in with the Inceptors. And
yeah.
Actually,
and I've played against that in fun games with you. I've got no problem with it.
I've got rules to represent it now. So there's is it Angel Artifice, which is the Chapter Master relic armor, which gives it +1 toughness and +1 wound, I think. So it correctly represents Gravis. So I was like, oh, brilliant. That's what I'm taking every time with him. Don't care if it's competitive, but it's like, that is how I can justify that he's kind of a Gravis captain. And
that's great, mate. I mean, look, I'm totally fine with the fact that you're doing it, and it's not my. Look, at the end of the day, if you turned up to an event and I didn't know you, and you said, right, this is my Smash captain, he's just a regular captain, but in order to represent him as Gravis, which is obviously how the model appears, I've given him this war gear to try and represent that. I would go, okay, fair enough, and we would play. What I'm saying is, I wouldn't do it to you. I wouldn't turn up with that. I would turn up with an appropriate model that represents what it is.
Yeah,
but again, that's me. That's not why
I get it. Yeah, because I think there's I like the conversion options of Primaris, and I can see people wanting to do kind of cool conversion. Yeah. I think I would draw. I mean, for like the odd character here and there, I think it's fine. I wouldn't necessarily go and do like a bunch of Vanguard vets because they're the new cool competitive thing to take. So I probably wouldn't do that. Although I do really love those. Was it the Blood Angel jump packs without the wings on? They seem really cool.
Yeah. But to be clear here, Phil, right? I have no problem with you turning up with stuff and me agreeing to it. I just don't like it. And I don't have to so to say I have no problem isn't accurate within that statement. I would allow, and I wouldn't kick up a fuss. I would play it. Like, there was a podcast years ago where I was talking about playing a guy who I've now come to know relatively well called Dan, who turned up to a 40k tournament, and he took Ravagers. Not Ravagers, sorry. It was Ravagers. The Drakari boats with loads of guns, and he had Dark Lances on them, but he was using them as disintegrators. And I was absolutely fine with him having done that. And I said to him, like, I haven't got a problem with that. But prior to me having played him, he had got called out on it, and he basically had to rewrite his army list because someone called him out on it. Now, whether I feel like that is right or wrong is here nor there. I made my feelings on it perfectly well known at the time. I still will play that person irrespective of that, but I wouldn't do it, right? To be clear, I wouldn't do it. Like, if I was going to turn up to a tournament, I make sure everything is right to what I say it is. Because because I think I owe that to my opponents.
Yeah.
Because that's what I would hope for. But I'm not them, and at the end of the day, I'm accepting of what people do. But I just don't like to have the conversation. I just think it's more respectful to your opponent to turn up with the thing that you say you've got. You know? It's like if I turn up and I go, right, this is a unit of this is my unit of I don't know, heavy intercessors, and I've converted them out of eradicators, but I've used heavy bolters to represent their bolt rifles. I'd hate that because I'd be like, okay, cool. Well, which one of these is a heavy bolter? Which one isn't? What type of bolter is it? What, you know, it's all this stuff where I'm like, nah. The only exception I would allow myself, and even this I don't like, but I would allow myself it out of desperation is if I turned up and I had a different type of bolt rifle, but only if every unit had the same bolt rifle. So if I turned up and I was like, all my intercessors have got assault bolters or auto bolt rifles, I would let that. I would sort of be okay with doing that.
Yeah, do you know?
But the only way I could justify that to myself is if the unit was made up of a mixture of different bolt rifles, so as I could at least be like, oh, today everyone's got this, but it would have to be everyone's got it, and it would have to be represented by a sort of mixture of guns.
I think if you were doing that army wide, so if, for example, I've got, I've got a couple of squads of each type, so stalker, auto, and rifle. And if I was to turn up and say, actually, they're all like the entire army is all assault bolters today, I don't think that's too much of a problem. I was thinking actually about it in terms of the eradicators and the heavy plasma, because as last week I was saying, I love the ones with the cables because they're just a cooler looking unit. But if I'm running them as white scars, probably the competitive way to play them is the assault variant, so I can make use of the advancing and still shooting. So I'd potentially. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with someone doing this to me or me doing it to them where I'm like, yeah, cool, all of these plasma stuff, they're all assault, because I'm just making an army-wide statement. And the variations are sort of so minor. The tricky bit comes when someone's doing it to like one squad but not to another squad. And then,
agreed. And it's like other armies, right? So like if you're a Drakari player and you've got Homunculus and you tell me that Homunculus has got a liquefier gun when he's actually got a stinger pistol on the model, I'm not going to actually know what the difference is. So whatever is on it, you just tell me, what's it do? Oh, okay, a liquefier gun, whatever. Like, because most people don't know what the difference is. It's like if you're a Hive Tyrant and you've got a Venom cannon, but you tell me it's a Barb Strangler, I'm probably not going to actually know what the difference is between those two weapons in appearance. Like, I mean, again, I would because I know, but the thing is a lot of people won't be able to tell me what the difference is between a Venom cannon and a Barb Strangler, right? You can tell me, right? Because you've played NIDS, you know what the difference is.
Vaguely. Honestly, I probably wouldn't now. I probably could have like a few years ago, but it's been a while.
Yeah. So ultimately, if you turn up and someone's got a Hive Tyrant and he says like, it's got a Barb Strangler, you're not going to go, oh, but that's a Venom cannon, mate. Because you just don't know, right? So there's certain instances where you've got to be acceptable. If it's a profile and a thing, you can accept it. But if you turn up and you go, that Hive Tyrant with wings hasn't really got wings, we've got a problem. That's not on. That's too much. Like you've gone too far. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. That's where I'm at with this stuff. It's like that's just how I approach it. If I'm doing it, I'm trying to make it all correct. And if I can't do it all correct, then I'll write the list to reflect what I've got. Because ultimately that's part of the game.
Well,
you're not going to see.
It was funny because my friend Nick Goddard, who's Krieger 40k, he's got a really stunning Death Guard army, and he was talking about how he's got loads of Death Guard with two like double knives, and basically because of remember we talked about in Death Guard, they've got the new ruling of you can only take what's in the box. So he's like, I can't do close combat squads anymore with my regular Plague Marines. He's like, I can, but I now need to take more of the special weapons rather than the regular knives and stuff. So he's like, while it's great for, he was saying basically it's great for new players, like it's easier to get into the build, but for someone like him who's spent ages lovingly painting and converting his army. It's like, cool, I've now got to redo a bunch of units or paint up more models to sort of swap stuff in and out to make it all playable, just so it's WYSIWYG.
Yeah. I mean, that is unfortunate. I will give you that. That is unfortunate, but unfortunately, that's what you got to do now, and it sucks for him. It sucks for anyone who's done that, but it is what it is, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think you raise that with GW, and you hope that they FAQ it to make it viable for people who've already done it. I think that's something that's essential for people like Nick and others that have done that kind of stuff. But yeah, it is what it is now, right? You just got to kind of accept it, which is kind of going back to what I was saying about not chasing the meta or not trying to, Games Workshop have made it very clear over the course of the last 4 years that they don't care about your army. They don't care about your pursuit of perfection or victory. They are just going to muck around with stuff constantly. It's like there's plenty of people out there that bought 9 Plague Burst Crawlers that can now only use 3. There's plenty of people out there who bought 9 Flying Hive Tyrants that can only now use 3. This stuff is just happening all the time. And unfortunately, you just have to, you feel bad for the people that are impacted by it, but ultimately it just is what it is, isn't it? I mean, it's just the nature of it. And also, it depends what you want out of the hobby. Because here's the thing, right? If I knew this Nick guy and he turned up and he was like, look, this is how they used to let me run my squads. I'm going to carry on doing it because I've beautifully converted all this stuff and I'm not going to go back and redo it. Well, at that point, I just go, yeah, of course, mate. Don't worry about it. Carry on. Because between mates having a game, it's not a problem. Doing that at a club, it's not a problem. The only issue is and that's always the thing I try and be clear about. I have a difference of perspective when it comes to competitive play to regular play. If I'm playing you in a friendly tournament, you can turn up with sheets of paper on ice cream sticks. I don't care in that instance. As long as you put them on the right basin, I know what it is. I'll play against you. If you're testing, you could turn up with a Space Marine army and tell me that it's orcs. I wouldn't mind as long as it was obvious what everything was and we agreed it. But tournament play, I just have a different perspective on it, and I just try and uphold those. I try and uphold that consistency, but noting that I'm not someone who will kick up a fuss. If at the end of the day you turn around and you go, Inquisitor Cortez is my chaplain, I mean, like, all right, fair enough, fine, but you really shouldn't be doing that. But I'll accept it because I can understand what that is.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it when it's just been done as a kind of a proxy for something. If it's a cool conversion, I'm normally like, yeah, that's cool because you've put some effort into it. But if you've just taken one model to replace another model that already exists, I'm a bit like, you're not meant to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the problem though, isn't it? But the thing is, at the end of the day, that's what TOs are there for, and it's at their discretion. If you've really got a problem with it, flag it to a TO. But accept the fact that a lot of people might not agree with your perspective and that some people might be frustrated by the fact that you did that. I mean, we've called TOs for problems with lists before, right, Phil? We were playing in a doubles and we called out the fact that these guys had taken free of something in one of their lists that they weren't allowed to do because the tournament stipulated that it was a rule of 2. And, at the time we were like, oh, God, I don't really want to have to call you on this, guys, but out of respect for everyone that you've played previous to us, I feel like we need to flag this because ultimately you've cheated. Whether you intended it or not is not really mine to interpret, but ultimately you've done something against the rules of the tournament. And we have, I feel an obligation to other players that it needs to be flagged. But at the same time, I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel like it was what I wanted to do. No. And to be fair, I think we
called them on it per se. It was like we were asking a question of, I was like, oh, are they units? And he's like, because I didn't know that if they could be in tank squadrons or not, and I don't think they can. And he was like, oh no, they're 3 separate units. And I was like, oh, how's that possible? Because it's a rule of 2. And he was like, wait, what? And then we were like, they were like, oh, what should we do? And we're like, we don't know. Maybe speak to the TO and see what they say. And that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I did bring over a TO to flag it to them. and have a conversation. And in retrospect, I felt a bit bad about that because I think really what we should have done was allow them to make that decision, and we tried to.
I thought
and
they did. I thought
maybe they did. Maybe I'm putting too much guilt on myself in this situation, but irrespective of what the outcome was, you know, they're there for a reason at the end of the day, and you've got to, you know, at the end of the day, you know, and the thing was, right, it's like we were on the top table, Phil, on an undefeated streak at that point, and so were they. And it was that thing where it's like, yeah, but you earned that victory illegally, so to speak, you know, because that list was way stronger than anything anyone else could have built because it didn't observe the rules. So it was one of those things, right? Oddly, they didn't give us a favorite game vote, though, eh? Who would have thought? What a surprise. Making friends and influencing people.
You couldn't woo them with your Knight of the Inner Circle trophy that time.
Oh yeah, well, unfortunately not. No, it's because I was with you, Phil. You're dead weight, mate. You're just, you know, you're just too difficult to like. Anyway, that's enough of that, mate. We've managed to take what was supposed to be a short segment and talk for 50 minutes.
I know. So before we say goodbye, I'm going to end on another tease. So I'm gonna next week. I'm going to talk about in the law. There is another loyalist Space Marine faction that has fallen to chaos, like the Dark Ages. Does that not excite you?
I mean, are you just talking about the Crimson Slaughter?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay. You're talking. Well, there we go. I don't know what you're talking about now. Who knows? I'll be interested to discover next week. You're going to make that into an entire segment?
No. It's just going to be a brief.
Like, it's just going to flag
chat
it.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm intrigued, mate. I'm intrigued to know what are we going to talk about next week. I guess we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, potentially. What is it? Maelstrom of War. If the White Dwarf comes. If not,
I do also want to talk. Oh, sorry, Phil. I didn't realise you were talking there. The internet signal went a bit weird. I also want to talk about the stratagem system and as it's developed. And I was saying before how we feel about it now that it's become quite bloated. I think there's some interesting chat that we can have around that mechanic specifically and what has happened to it over the years of its evolution, and how it works in game, because I think there's a lot of weirdness to it now that wasn't maybe there before, and a lot of implied values that players had around it that I don't think apply anymore either, and that essentially it's become a very certain type of gameplay mechanic. But anyway, we'll work it out. We'll know more this time next week when we're talking about it. But as ever, Phil, thank you so much, mate. It's been a pleasure chatting to your good self, and obviously thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, maybe consider leaving us a review that says as much, or engaging with us on social media, such as The Way of Things. But there you go, guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.